To those of you who are wondering who I am now, and to those of you who are trying to silence words and sentences that they do not want to hear, I'm the Overseer. And I'm in fucking control.
No.
Welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast.
Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
And it's been a while since we dedicated a podcast to tension, but with everything that's happened in the past few weeks and what's about to happen tomorrow, I think it deserves it.
So this podcast is going to be about
the tension experience. And we have periscopes and all these fun things to talk about, including our return trips to Ascension.
Which were very unique for both of us.
Right. And actually, you and I haven't spoken about it.
No, I know a little bit of what happened during your visit the second time, and you know a little bit about what happened to me.
Yeah. But I think we both were like, oh, I want to know, but I don't want to know, especially because I went through a little bit later.
Yeah, you did.
So you must have been
it was killing me,
tortured.
Dude. It was
like,
killing me.
I need to talk.
Yeah. I really, it was driving me crazy because I so wanted to know, because in particular, there was one sequence in particular that I wanted to know. I figured you would get a version of, but I wanted to know what they did. And what little you've hinted at for me, I think yours was radically different than mine.
Right. You're talking about Ascension still, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so but before we get to that, let's go over what's happened since the last time we talked about tension.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, because there really hasn't been a lot happening as far as periscopes and whatnot, because they were focusing on Ascension, which is totally understandable. But there was a lead up the week before Halloween, and then going up until now, where it just seems like it's like the old days.
Yeah, things escalated.
Yeah, really quick. So what happened is when Kim, Electric Hippo, who you may know from past podcasts and her BOS affiliation, when she went through Ascension, the Overseer, which is Addison, had asked her something. And before we go any further, we should probably say that these are going to be spoilers. I mean, Ascension ends this weekend, so they're not really spoilers, but just in case, we're saying, hey, they're spoilers.
Yeah, we are going to be revealing some details that other people have told us. We're going to be revealing details about our trips through. So just be forewarned. If you want to discover this on the forums, Ascension is ending, like Mike said, but we're going to be revealing things that have not been revealed before.
Right. And with this specific example, with what happened to Kim, she did post it on the forum, so I feel okay talking about it because it was public. So we all know Kim as the lovely member of BOS, and when she went through Ascension the second time, Addison basically asked her to stand by her side and be her right-hand woman. You know, usually right-hand man, but right-hand woman, man. Whoa, man? Whoa, man.
Oh.
Yeah, Can you tell I just had a lot of food and sugar? That happened, and that's what leads up into this. So I feel like Kim and I are each other's foil. Like, you know, if there was a story, it would be, you know, Kim against Mike.
A little bit.
We have nothing against each other personally. It's all part of tension. You know, she's BOS, so that automatically means I hate BOS, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, but it's just funny. So when that happened, there was a thread in the forums, and we started questioning, like, you know, Overseer, like, well, why is it her choice? Why isn't it a democratic thing? If she wants what's for the community, why don't we have a say? Blah, blah, blah. And Samson, who is a newer character that I didn't get to meet until recently, came on the forums and basically said, stop talking and questioning Overseer. Like, if you keep it up, we're going to ban your accounts and we're going to delete the thread. So you can tell how well that went over, especially me being me.
Yes.
And so it was like the triple M. It was me, Mustafa, and Max. And we were just like, oh, come on, dude. Like, so we started talking about all this stuff, and we actually got banned from the forums for a little while. And then Overseer came and rescued us and reinstated us. But that actually happened. We got banned for talking about Samson and Overseer and what happened inside.
I missed much of that, Mike, because I had not gone through my second trip through Ascension, so I was avoiding the forums. So I missed some of all of these details, and I was getting it secondhand through people. So I was really surprised to learn that you and a couple of others had been banned for simply having conversations on the forum.
Oh, totally. And that's where the conversation went. It's like, well, why is this happening? Why do you want stuff hidden? And why don't you want truth being spoken and questions asked and all of that stuff? But yeah, and then Overseer came on the forums and said you will not silence them, and reinstate our account. So thank you, Overseer. And then the next day there was a Periscope, and it was a while since we heard that Periscope whistle, and we did, and it was Addison. Mm-hmm. And at this point in my life, I was still kind of holding a grudge against Addison. And I mean, it's not a grudge, but it's just I'm very cynical towards her. So when she did that Periscope, my notes for this are she tries to do her best for imitation. And, she kind of was, because she did the whole I am in effing control and was very forceful. And I was like, oh, that reminds me of 4. Why are you trying to be 4? Remember the girl you killed? That's just me, though.
Now, like I said, the whole Kim thing that you mentioned, I had not witnessed the beginning of that on the forum because I hadn't gone through tension. By the time this Periscope happened and Addison came forward, this was a few days after I'd gone back through my second time. So I had seen Addison in person being in control. So I was a little surprised by this Periscope, because I didn't understand why other people were having so many questions, I think including you, because I had no doubt at that point that she was the Overseer, that she was in control.
I don't trust anything.
Okay.
And that's the thing. At that point, I still hadn't gone through the second time. So I'm not just going to rely on other people's testimonials.
Right.
I needed to see it for myself. And that's part of how we got banned, because it's like, oh, don't worry. I'm planning on asking her all of these questions.
Well, I think, do you think the questions that you and Max and Mustafa were asking, do you think that's why? Because she spoke in several languages. She spoke in foreign languages, and through a series of translations on the forum, several people tried to translate it, and we got variations of the translations. But it basically came down to that she hasn't lost her faith, that she is strong and she is in control. She knows what has been done in the past by these people around her, and she hasn't forgotten it. She is herself, and she is very cognizant and aware, and she is in effing control. Do you think that is direct response to the whole questioning thing?
It might be.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you have all these people questioning her who haven't seen her in a while, and then she comes on and is like, hey, guys, don't forget, it's me. I'm in charge. But, me being cynical and still not having gone through, I was like, we'll see.
Right. Okay.
Because even going through we'll get to this, but even the lead up to my second time, even I think I made you feel uncomfortable a bit, because I was like, I'm going back a second time. My goal is to break Addison.
Yeah, you did make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But but also because I had been through the second time, and the thing, and I hope I never let on to you, because I was fighting so hard not to, but I felt you were on a fool's errand.
Right.
Because I knew that they would shut whatever you were going to attempt down.
How'd they know that, Russell?
I'm not saying anything. I just think that they were. No, I'm
going to check your emails later.
No. I was like, I didn't tip anyone off to anything, but that's why I didn't really talk to you a lot, because you were so. And I was, to be totally honest, I was excited for you to go through You know this. I was like, the closer you got to going through, the more I wanted to talk to you, but couldn't talk to you. I was really happy you were finally like jumping in and going through the second time. But I also knew that you were probably going to be seeing something that you were not prepared for.
Right.
And
we'll get to that.
Yeah, but that's why that's why I was very uncomfortable sometimes when you were talking like that.
Yeah. It wasn't your precious little girlfriend?
No. Because she was in effing control, dude.
Yeah, I'm still not buying it.
Yep.
Anyways, so that Periscope happened probably because so many people were questioning her, and yeah.
Which added a very odd angle to sort of something that happened a couple of days later. And that was the fact that she called me. And she, at this point, what happened was I got a phone call from her, and she, look, I'm just now, it's like, you know, the Pavlovian dog reflex now. Like, if my phone rings and it says unknown or no caller ID, I immediately answer it no matter what. Mike, I was having a bad morning. Like, I'd received some bad news. I was like it was a bad morning, and my phone rang and it was no caller ID, and it was I was like, okay, I'm answering this because I have to. And it was Addison. And I think even in the way I said hello, she realized something was up. And she said, Russell, do you know who this is? The standard greeting that she always gives me. And I said, yes, I do. And she said, how are you? And I actually told her, I said, you know what? I'm having a really bad day. And she apologized, and she said, I'm really sorry that you're having a bad day. And, you know, and she said, she let me talk for a second about, you know, something that had happened. And it was very brief. And she said, well, I'm really sorry, but I want to say something to you. And I said, look, like, let's not make this phone call about me. You called me. Let's talk about you. And she said, well, I have a confession. I don't think I've been 100% honest with you the last time we saw each other. And maybe not with some of the others. So in light of the Periscope where she said, I'm in control, and in light of some of the things that I saw my second time through Ascension, this really threw me. And what she said is, I really need to see you in person again. So we talked about it, and we set up a day. And we weren't sure on the time. We weren't sure what schedules were going to work out. And she was going to contact me the following night. But she said, if you were available, I need to see you tomorrow night. And that was sort of the way we left that phone call, was that I was sort of on call. So, and then we're going to probably get into that a little bit later, because that actually, how do you feel? You think we want to wait until talk about that a little bit later?
Whatever you think. Whatever's easiest.
Let's talk about more of the Periscopes leading up to the end weekend of Ascension.
So the next week there was a Periscope, and in that Periscope you see Simon, Suit Guy, and Samson, and they're in the processing room, and they go to the table, they open up a briefcase, and there's a laptop in there. They pull up the laptop, and they go to myhauntlife.com. They go to our website. Mm-hmm. And I am watching this. Were you watching this live?
No, I couldn't get it to load on my phone.
Oh.
I tried to pull it up on my phone, and I was driving, but I heard the Periscope, and I hit Periscope, and because I was in my car, that's what it was, because when you sent me the message, I actually pulled over. So I was driving, but I saw the Periscope thing, and I just tapped it with my thumb, and then put the phone down, and realized that it wasn't going to load. So okay. No, I did not see this live.
So they're playing this live, and I'm freaking out because they're on our website.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is happening 2 days before I go back for my second time. Mm-hmm. So me and a few other people on the Periscope are like, Mike, you're dead. You're going to die when you go back. And, you know, Mike and Russell, you're dead, you know, that kind of stuff. And like, I didn't know what was happening. So they navigate to the podcast, and they go to the podcast where we interview Darren and Clint. Mm-hmm. And they start playing it. And while it's playing, the camera moves to the briefcase where the laptop was. And under that, there was a script, and it was a script of the podcast. Basically, what Clint was saying, they were showing that part of the script, like word for word, what was happening. And so here's what's funny. So I'm like, oh my God, they're showing that Darren and Clint's stuff was scripted, blah, blah, blah. Never once thinking people are going to think that were in on it, or we were part of the script. I didn't get that until I started reading the forums, and it was like, oh, Mike and Russell are in on it. That whole interview they did was scripted. Like, they read lines too. And I was like, what? Oh crap. I didn't even see how this could have been turned around on us.
Okay. Well, so what happened was you told me, dude, did you see that Periscope live? And I literally, like, at stoplight said, no, driving. And you said, now. And so I pulled over and I got my phone and I was able to replay it. And I had the same reaction. I was stunned that it was myhaltlife.com. And then, of all people, Andrew texted me and said, Russell, you and Mike have explaining to do.
Oh, that's awkward.
And that's how it dawned on me was, Andrew called us out, privately in a text to me. And I was like, wait a minute. And that's when it hit me. And then when I because I was on my phone and it's a small image, I kind of blew up the image on my phone. And I told you, I posted this on the forum. There's something on that page. Well, first of all, we are never scripted. We are never seen scripted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that script page, Mike, what happened to you after that Periscope?
I got a phone call from Samson.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was Samson, because once again, I had not met him or talked to him or heard his voice before that. But I got a phone call. It was from Samson saying that this rabbit hole goes much deeper than I think. And then he said to check my email in a couple minutes. And I checked my email in a couple minutes, and there was an email from OSDM, and it was a close-up picture of that script page.
Which revealed that Clint and Darren were speaking terms, and in the prose of the script,
yeah,
there are stage directions as to how they should be delivering those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So even their attitude was scripted, supposedly, in the interview that they gave to myhauntlife.com when Mike and I spoke to them.
Yeah, and I posted that image on the forums.
Okay, and that's when I posted on the forum that it actually chilled me to read at the top of that page what was at the very top of the page. Which at the top of the page it says, and unless you are familiar with scripts, this may not make any sense, but it's REINTAPT-day, which stands for Russell's Interior Apartment Day. Which means they scripted my home into this event. They scripted my living room into this event, which completely chilled me when I read that.
But that goes back to the phone call that you got after we interviewed them, saying, like,
that's true.
Because the fight, I had joked around saying it was a lover's quarrel between Darren and Clint, and it was, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, everybody knows already, blah, blah, blah. But it sounded like seeing this script made that phone call and the phone call following it made that much more sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because obviously their visit to us was part of the agenda,
right?
And that was disturbing to me. It just the fact that it was sort of a personal invasion. And look, I've had haunts come to my home before, so it was just a really weird mental mind connection for me. It was just, like I said, it sent a chill down my spine.
And then the next day there was another Periscope, but it was called His Voice. That one didn't happen because the Periscope didn't end up loading. But this is where I started overthinking, because that's what I do. So we had the Periscope that showed the podcast and an interview between all of us. And then the next day they have one called His Voice. I started freaking out because this was the day before going back to Ascension for me. So you have the podcast and you have His Voice. Podcast, His Voice, I'm going the next day. I was thinking I was going to get screwed somehow, because is it coincidental that it's the podcast and then they had one called His Voice, where our voices are on the podcast, you know, that's immediately where my head went to, because obviously it has to be all about me.
So, and, you know, what other his is it? To be totally honest, because I had encountered Samson was the first person I thought of.
Okay.
Because Samson had been messing with a few people. And not long before this, Samson had messed with me a little bit. So that's where I went first, but I totally understand why you felt the way you did.
It was paranoia at its best.
Yeah.
And then the next day, this was the day I was going back to Ascension, and there was a Periscope titled "A Gift for Her." And this Periscope happened late at night.
Yeah, this tore me apart, man.
So this didn't tear me apart. This got me even more excited
I bet.
and scared, because my processing time was at 11. So I had to be at the parking lot by 10:30 in order to sign the waiver and whatnot. So that means that the 10 o'clock people had to be at the parking lot by 9:30. This Periscope happened about 9:40, 9:45-ish. So that means this happened right after the 10 o'clock group got brought over to go through Ascension.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that this Periscope was happening for only people going through 11 o'clock, the 11 o'clock time slot.
Right.
So, and I was just about to leave to get there on time when this happened. And oh man, like after this Periscope, I probably like broke every speeding law going there, because it was amazing.
It was very disturbing. The Periscope began inside a car, and you quickly realized that it was Samson. And who do you think the other character was?
I don't know. It was probably Suit Guy.
Yeah, there's a character now that people are calling Suit Guy, and I think that you're right. I think that's who it was. But they get out of the car, and Samson is known to play music in his car. We'll get to that a little while later. And there's music playing, but they get out of the car and they go to the trunk, and they open the trunk, and inside there is a man. It looks like he has been roughed up a bit. It looks like his hands are bound. And they pull him out of the trunk, and actually at first I don't think a lot of people recognized him, because it's dark, he's in a trunk, and it appeared to be Tom Barrow, who is Addison's dad. And the title of the Periscope was "A Gift for Her." And they started to lead him away from the car toward the compound, and then the Periscope ended. Look, you know that I have wanted to reconnect with Tom at times during this. And I have always felt that Tom asked me to try to help his daughter, and I feel like I have failed on several occasions.
Why? You don't even know who his daughter is.
This again? Really?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. Tom is Addison's daughter.
No. Tom is Addison's daughter.
Okay, all right.
That's more believable than Addison being Tom's daughter.
Okay, wait. You're getting me flustered. Okay, I agree that there is some evidence that Tom may not be Addison's father. But there is evidence that there is a connection there.
Oh, it's cute that you believe.
I believe.
That's all you got right now.
So this really upset me, because one of the things I was hoping, even for my second trip through Ascension, I was hoping there to be some connection with Tom. You know, Tom is one of those characters that I really sort of wanted, oh good Lord, I'm going to use the C word, closure with. You know, there was something about him that I feel like I have failed a couple of times in regards to Tom. And look, we've talked about it. He broke in and he looked at me, he stared me down at a live event as if I was nothing. And it upset me, because I have tried to be there for the woman he claims to be trying to save, whatever that means. So, that Periscope really messed with me. But you were the one going through that night.
Yeah. So that made me start thinking all these crazy things in my mind. Like, oh my God, like, am I going to get to kill him or something? Like, that would be amazing. Like, or
Wow.
just something like that. Because like, I've never believed he was her father. So it was like, maybe there's something I'm going to be doing inside that's going to prove that, or, something like that. But what also went through my mind is early on, Darren and Clint said that there were going to be scenes and rooms that were only available one night and one night only.
Right.
When I saw that Periscope, that got me so excited because like, holy crap, this might be one of those one night only things.
Right.
And I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into that. But then a couple days later after that, there was a random email that came from us from the overseer. And it was only to certain people and only to, I guess, the active people in the community. And they gave us a Twitter handle and they gave us a Periscope handle to add, and said, tomorrow at this time, add these accounts.
And the title of that email was The Culmination. So there's a hint that we're building towards some kind of conclusion.
And then the next day at that specific time, we followed that Periscope account. Periscope popped up entitled The End. And what it was Addison, and she started the Periscope by singing Amazing Grace. And
she was facing away from the camera. She wasn't looking directly in the camera. She seemed to be engaging with someone off screen, and very faintly behind her singing, you could hear another voice, a male voice.
Was blind, but now I see.
Now, unfortunately, this was a glitchy broadcast of the Periscope, and even when you played it back, there were glitches in the broadcast. So at first, I was a little concerned that we wouldn't get all the information, but it seems the Periscope, seemed to calm down a bit. She turned to face the camera, and she stated that the words were more important than the messenger.
It matters not who says the words, as long as the light is delivered by those whom the people can hear best.
And that this story would continue long after she was gone, and it was the active participants that were going to continue it.
right, because she said in the beginning, only the active move forward. Like,
True.
these have been the 5 words we've said over and over again.
And that has been true. That has been stated many times during the progression of the tension experience in Ascension. She stated that this approaching weekend, which is the last weekend of Ascension, that there would be something we would be invited to on Sunday evening. And that those people who received the email were expected to be present, if at all possible.
And only the people that got that email.
Correct. And near the very end of the Periscope, a face appeared behind Addison, slowly coming out of the dark. And it was Samson. And Samson put a hand on her shoulder and said, "Turn it off." And the Periscope ended.
And then, in typical we're going to mess with your mind fashion, a couple of days after that, we get another Periscope, and that one's entitled Far From Over. So we go from the culmination to the end to Far From Over. In this Periscope, we see someone hiding a letter in a trash can. And then at the end of it, she reveals her face, and it's a woman with black hair. It's someone that nobody knows who it is. Like, we've never encountered this person before. And so a bunch of people got there, probably around the same time, like Buzz, Joe, Michael Gray, they all got it. And what was in the letter, what the hidden letter was a printout of emails between Michelle, Samson, and someone named Horace, who is a high counselor and the 7th maker of the clock. It sounds like Horace is in charge. Samson is terrified of him. I mean, I wouldn't say terrified, but he's very like, whoa, I better watch my step. It seems like they report to Horace.
Well, I got to jump in now because I've worked in corporate world for so long. Samson is doing the most horrible version of corporate speak that I have ever witnessed. And it really is, it's the sucking up sort of version of Samson. And, Taste of it is like, I can speak for Michelle as well. Michelle, we theorize, is the girl with the black hair.
Right.
We're not positive, but that seems to be likely. And one of Samson's emails is, I can speak for Michelle as well when I say that we are both grateful for everything that we have been given, and I will personally show this by completely rectifying the mistake. Come this Sunday, I believe you will be quite pleased with my results. And every interaction from Samson in these leaked emails has that. It's something I hate encountering in the corporate world.
The kiss-ups.
Yeah, it's the kiss-up.
Yeah.
And he's doing that. And for him to be doing that is a little intimidating because it makes you really want to fear Horace.
Right. But Michelle doesn't seem to be too worried about him. It's like she's talking back to him. It's at first someone, I think it was Lucas actually, he messaged me on Facebook. He's like, was that 4? It's like, because the black hair, and then reading these emails, it sounds like 4.
A little bit.
Maybe it's 4's daughter, and she's come to avenge her mother's death.
Whoa, wait, ow, my brain just collapsed. Stop.
Hey, I'm the one with the weird theories.
Wow. Ow, that one actually hurt.
But that would make sense because somehow 4 would bring her into this organization and following in her mother's footsteps. Maybe one day she wants to become a gatekeeper. This can go so many different ways.
Wow.
Because she sounds exactly like 4 in these emails.
I hate it when you say things like that and they make so much sense.
Because seriously, replace Horace with 3.
Oh yeah.
And replace Michelle with 4. It's the same tone.
It's a dynamic. Yeah. It's a similar familiar dynamic, definitely. I will give you that.
Okay. That's all I needed to hear. I'm happy now.
What would the sequel to 4 be?
Michelle.
4 Square?
Oh, jeez. No, that would be 2 of them.
Oh, that's true. Never mind. So anyway.
The square root of 4?
The square root of 4? Maybe.
I don't know. We probably should not talk about stupid
We have
things.
digressed. Let's keep math out of this. I made a joke the other night with someone. We were talking about periscopes in another subject. And they were joking about the first time they periscoped, they made the mistake of they accidentally flipped the camera. Mm-hmm. And to be totally honest, I wondered if that's what had happened.
Oh, okay.
That the person who was never supposed to show their face. But that got cleared up the next day, very clearly, because there was another periscope.
Right.
And this one was called Right Now. We were looking over the shoulder of someone, a dark-haired woman, who is sort of impatiently tapping her fingers, waiting for the periscope to kick in and for people to gather, I guess. And she wrote on a piece of paper, "Only for the active." It was in a park. The location was tagged on the periscope. And that was it. There was no landmarks that you could recognize. It was like you basically had to go from the tag of the periscope. So immediately, text started flying on the forum. Multiple people went racing to this park. The 2 people who managed to get there and actually find the right location, multiple people went to other sides of the park. It seemed like the tag wasn't very clear, but they found the park bench that she was sitting on, and there was a message. One of the people started periscoping, and there was a message that said, "Listen for the horn," stated in the periscope. And I believe that was Julie. Mm-hmm. And
I just want to say something about Julie. Julie, I've never met you. I'm not even sure if you listen to this, but watching you periscope this was so awesome for me.
It was so exciting.
Because I could tell any one of us that were in your position would have done the same thing. Oh my God, there's a horn. Tension is commenting. There's a horn. Where's the horn? And then just running towards it and being out of breath. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, it was so exciting. Absolutely. And thank you for doing it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. And there was this message, listen for the horn, and this confusion of what horn? And a car horn happens, and you see as she's running a car, and she approaches the car, gets in the back seat, and the woman from the Periscope the day before is sitting there on the phone and basically demands that the phone be turned off and the Periscope end.
Yeah.
So Julie was invited into the back seat of this car where this woman was on the phone, and then Julie Periscoped a little bit later. It was a very short trip around the block, and she Periscoped afterwards and said that there wasn't a lot of information given in this Periscope. However, this woman, who I guess Julie asked if she was Michelle, and she never answered directly, but kind of smirked in a way that Julie took as being affirmative. And she was on the phone with someone named Jack, and apparently this woman was encouraging Jack to pull the trigger. Now, Mike, of course, on the forums, immediately lots of theories emerged as to what that possibly meant. But the fact that so little information was gained, the fact that what happened inside the vehicle that was most interesting is that apparently she was given a form of putty, and they took her fingerprints.
Right.
Now, this ended for Julie very quickly, and Julie started a Periscope. Well, apparently what happened is another person got to the park and got the same experience. Mm-hmm. Like, they also got into the car. And that person on the forums goes by KJ. And he apparently had a very similar experience and said that not a lot of information, but they got his fingerprints too. So I think that's the key thing about this, right?
Yeah, they have fingerprints. And then he was also given numbers.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
That's where a lot of theorizing coming in. Is it a bank account? Because I guess when he was in the car, she was on the phone saying, we're going to make these rich bastards broke or something like that. So could it be an account number that they're going to drain the accounts? Could it be, some sort of social security number and that's why they have fingerprints, because they're going to make new identities for her and Jack.
That's a really interesting theory.
Yeah. And, another theory someone brought up is she asked both Julie and KJ if they smoke. And I think it was Michelle that said, is that because they want their DNA? So are they going to make clones somehow? Like, I don't doubt OSDM has this crazy laboratory somewhere where they can make that happen. They seem to have deep pockets.
So, and somewhere, and unfortunately, I don't know which one, KJ or Julie, said that there was another aspect to the phone call where the woman who we theorize is Michelle was also trying to calm Jack a bit and saying, do you know how much you mean to me?
Right.
So there's something between these two people, and they are obviously working together, and they've got some kind of a big plan.
But here's the thing. This is supposed to end tomorrow.
Yes.
And we're meeting new characters days before this is supposed to end. So, what is going to happen? This is so nuts. I mean, remember when Ascension started and we had the same exact conversation?
Yeah.
Because there were periscopes leading up to the day before opening night. And even the day of, there was a periscope of Addison. After our interview, because we interviewed them on opening night for the public.
Right.
And, just there's so much going on and so many different wheels turning that it's still happening.
But the idea that they are evidence gathering against patrons, and one of the other people sort of hinted at various versions of this, but I flat out said, look, the second time through Ascension, a few of us were asked to do something that in a court of law could make us accessories to a crime.
Right.
And if they're now evidence gathering and they're collecting data, which becomes a very important word later, that is really frightening. The fact that they're trying to gain control, perhaps, of all of us who've been playing this game. The evidence gathering aspect of this is really disturbing to me.
But it's really interesting and here's another thing. We're recording this the day before the end is supposed to happen. So we're recording this on Saturday. Tomorrow, which we mentioned previously, is Addison opening up the doors one last time. So there's already theories about what's going to happen tomorrow. Some of us think she's going to die somehow because she said everything is going to keep on even after I'm gone. Mm-hmm. And now these two new people come in with fingerprints of people, of the active, because they keep saying only the active. they have fingerprints of the active. So is something going to go down tomorrow where they're going to use those fingerprints and be like, oh, no, it wasn't us. It wasn't OSDM. It was those crazy people trying to get in the cult.
So KJ and Julie, not trying to upset you or put you in a state of unease, but watch your backs.
Yeah. Granted, when this comes out, it will be after that.
It'll be too late, but...
Yeah. But we have the best intentions.
Yes, we do.
And then after that Periscope, something interesting came on Facebook. There was a picture of Sentinel and two people in masks saying, BOS, shall we meet tomorrow? And a Periscope happened as we were recording this. So this is added on. Basically, there was a Periscope, and it was in the parking lot that you meet at for Ascension. And you see cars just come up, and the people get out of their cars, and one by one we realize it's Rizzo, it's Kim, it's Addison, it's Ale, who made the trip from Arizona, and someone else who I'm not sure who it is. And the man knocks on the van. The van opens, like the back hatch of it, and then the Periscope cuts off.
So we don't see what they saw at the back of the van.
But why is Kim there? If she's the overseer's right hand, yet she's still hanging with BOS. You know,
that's a really good question. Am I going to have to take her out tomorrow night?
Oh, you might.
Oh. Don't take that personally, Kim.
Yeah, be careful. Oh. The not delicate flower might have to fight you.
I am not a delicate flower, and I am willing to throw down.
But that's really interesting. And, you know, I made a joke on Facebook to her. I was like, oh, I hope Addison doesn't rat you out, or, you know, or something like that. But she was there. Yeah. Addison has to know. Mm-hmm. So is BOS all part of OSDM and part of the OA? Is it all one? Like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, I guess we'll find out soon.
Yep.
So that brings us up to date with everything that's happened since the last time we talked about tension on the podcast. Like I said, we're recording this on Saturday. It's our intention to record after whatever happens tomorrow so we can wrap this all up into one pretty little bow and have it all in one spot. So now that that's out of the way, we've finally been through Ascension twice. We can finally talk about it. And again, we said there was a spoiler warning earlier. Spoiler warning, just in case. We're going to talk about what happened in Ascension the second time we went through and compare notes. So now is your time to turn off. But please don't.
In case there's people who haven't gone through this live event who are listening to this, your first trip through Ascension, you can go on the forums, you could read things that happened. But in a nutshell, it plays out like a mystery. You show up at this compound. Obviously, there's an organization called the OOA. They are either recruiting or judging. They're doing something with you. They're processing you for something. And they ask you a lot of questions. They make a lot of judgment calls by your behavior. They put you through some tests. They ask you to reflect on certain things. They put you through a sequence that engages all of your senses, from your sight to your taste, your sense of touch, your sense of smell. And through the course of this, you are broken away from your main group. Some people are chosen to experience certain rooms. Some people are chosen to experience other rooms. In the end, you end up in one room together, and there's a ceremony that happens. And during that, you have realized throughout the course of the evening that someone has been chosen for the chance for Ascension. Ascension, if successful, is going to bring back communication with the God that is Anak. Do you think that's a fair summary?
Yeah, that's really good.
The weird thing that happens is you realize that the trigger for Ascension is a human sacrifice. And it fails.
Which I'm taking personally.
Now, we have been told, there's been rumor that a couple of nights of Ascension that this process somehow succeeded. I haven't heard any details of what happened on those nights.
I haven't either.
So we can't address that. But we know for the majority of the run, this process failed each night. Much to the disappointment of all of the OOA firm believers, much to the disappointment of Addison, the overseer. So, when you return your second time to Ascension, it becomes a very different experience.
And so that's one of the things that I was so curious about, because a couple of our friends, Jake and Michelle, went through early on for a second time. And when they came back, they were blown away and said it was 100% different.
Right.
So I couldn't wait. But you went before me.
I think I went a week and a half before you.
Yeah.
Like I think so. Yeah, and I don't know how we should handle this, because I think at certain points, you know, I went, and it was very interesting that before I went back, I received a message, which I think multiple people received before they returned to Ascension, from Tom Barrow. Mm-hmm. And I basically saying, look, my daughter's in there somewhere. I see your name. And just, you know, if you can tell her that her family loves her and is waiting for her to return home, please do. So I wrote back to Tom and I said, look, you may recall me. I've tried to help you in the past. If you know that I'm returning tonight, you must have information from the inside. So if you have people on the inside, this is what I'm going to do. I will be wearing something yellow because your daughter gave me a yellow rose and I see it every day. Mike, if you look, the yellow rose is above a clock in my kitchen.
Oh, yeah. It's dead and wilted.
Yes.
Which is a good representation about Addison's spirit.
You...
I had to. Come on.
You're so cruel.
You set me up so good for
You're
that.
So cruel. But I told Tom, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have something on me that is yellow. And if anyone on your side can communicate with me, if there's anything I can do that, you know, it helped me during the experience tonight, let me know. And he attached a photo of he and Addison. And what I did is I printed out that photo.
Oh, that's funny. And you'll understand why that's funny in a minute.
And I reduced it in size, and I wrote underneath, I wrote a note, and I said, you know, I just want to pass this on to you. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Russell. And I signed it. And I had it with me. So what I did is during my lunch break that day from work, I went to a nearby florist, and I got a small yellow boutonniere, like a small yellow bud of a rose. And here's the funny extreme haunt side of me, Mike. How do you apply a boutonniere?
You have to pin it.
Yes. I was not about to go into Ascension with a pin basically over my heart. So I was like, that would be a really bad decision. And of course, when they gave it to me, it has this hat pin that is about 4 inches long. They're like, there is no way I'm going to pin this thing to my chest. So what I did was I was wearing a black shirt that had a pocket. And I put it in my pocket and I kind of shoved it down. And at various times during the evening, I would pull it out when Addison was around. I would reach in my pocket and just pull the yellow flower out just so it was visible. And I tried to keep it visible as much as possible. And there were times when I was being moved around that I was afraid of losing it. So, but I had something yellow on me, as I promised Tom. So I arrive. They make it very clear. I arrive, and also Michael Gray was there that night, and it was Michael Gray's second time. And I actually wound up going through a couple of things with him because it was his second time as well. In the van, I was very deliberately the last person in the van, so I was the first person out. Now, when I walked in, Mike, immediately, Mary Lynn, who is a sweetheart and quite the flirt, just rushed over to me and said, "Oh, you're back." And she didn't have me do any of the processing stuff. She led me almost immediately into the bathroom, and just to let me know that if I needed to take care of anything, that this was my last chance. You know how this works. And I said, actually, I don't feel the need to, but maybe I should just in case. And she looks at me and she says, "Okay, go ahead." I went, "Oh." And she goes, "What, are you being shy?" And if you know Mary Lynn's voice,
yeah,
it's kind of a southern accent sort of thing going on. And she just kind of smiled and she said, "Oh, okay." I thought she was going to leave the room, and she turned around and went, "I'll turn my back."
Nice.
And I went, "I can't." And she said, "Oh, okay. Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." And she said, "Okay, let's go." And she led me out of the bathroom. And I immediately got introduced once again to, and unfortunately I don't know his name. I'm drawing a blank on his name. The tall gentleman who takes your picture.
Miles?
Yeah. He came, he greeted me, welcomed me back, and he took my picture. And she said, well, the overseer wanted to know as soon as he was ready. And she had a walkie-talkie, and she said, like, tell the overseer he's here. She led me. I never saw that first room, which is kind of a shame because I didn't spend any time in that front room the first time through, like no time. And I got taken in and out of there very quickly. And so I never saw that first room more than like 2 minutes that everyone talks about the games and the puzzles and the punch and everything. So I didn't even see that this time. So I was led, Addison walks out and she pulls me through this door into this backstage area. And she said, like, is this what you wanted? Are you here to see how all of this works? Well, this is it. And I say, like, look, I'm not sure. I came back for you. I said, I'm really torn because I have this message, but I don't know if I should deliver it to you. And I gave her the note from the email, the picture of her, who I believe is her dad and her from a younger time in her life. And she read the note underneath I'd written, and she I think she got a little angry. And she said, are you here to save me? Is that what you think I need?
Wow.
And I said, I don't know what you need, but I have been here to support you, and I don't know. But I was told to deliver this message of love from your family. And she said, look, I don't need saving. She took me and she said, you need to go to processing. So she led me into the processing room, which at that point, other people I think were probably still in the van. And I was led into the processing room and I encountered Simon, who welcomed me back and said, well, let's get a few details straight. And he asked me a couple of details about rooms that I'd seen the first time. And he said, which of these lovely ladies did you talk to the first time and what was her name?
Yeah.
And I could not for the life of me. I know I got her name the first time. I could not remember her name. I was so flustered. And I remember it was this woman because of her eyes, because it was the woman with the wonderful glasses and the beautiful eyes. And he said, well, maybe you should pay more attention. So he asked me a couple more questions, and he went and had me stand by the door, and he said, you need to strip. So he had me take off all the clothes, and all the women gathered around. And a couple of them were sort of touching me a couple of times. And when Simon was questioning me, all of the women gathered around me and were like rubbing my back and touching me a couple of times. It was very intimidating. And they all watched me like from a couple feet away undress. And I was standing there and, I was told to leave my socks and underwear on. They took my clothes, they took everything. And so I'm standing there, in my underwear, and then he tells me to sit on the bench, and Michael Gray comes in, and he goes through the same process. So then we start being processed.
Was he on his scooter still?
Yes, he was.
So did he roll over to Simon?
Yes, he did.
Just picturing that is such an amazing sight in my mind right now.
So, and he asked us some of the same questions of Michael, and so we got different people to be processed by this time. I got more sexual questions the second time, and the woman was a bit embarrassed to ask, but she did her best, but was struggling a little bit with them. And I was then told to stand in the center of the room, and Michael Gray was told to stand in the center of the room. So one thing they did with Michael and I during this process was they stood us in the center of the room facing each other, and Simon kept having us get closer, and I think he picked up Michael's unease because Simon challenged him and said how uncomfortable he looked. Michael said, I'm not used to being this close to another guy in my underwear. Like, Michael started explaining that. And so just out of curiosity, I looked at Simon and I said something along the lines of, I don't think he trusts me.
Oh, man.
And I looked at Michael and I challenged Michael and I said, come on, I trust you.
Give me a kiss.
And Simon sort of picked up and like really was egging us on a little bit about getting closer and how uncomfortable Michael was. And then Michael ended up in that additional processing room off to the side of the main processing room. He had been in there for a couple of minutes. I don't know what happened to him, but I got sent in after him, and Michael was sitting at that desk. And I've heard this story from a couple people that I was sent in and Michael had to finish my processing.
Okay, I've heard about that.
And that is probably the most uncomfortable I've been in Ascension, because the handler woman who was in there, I had to describe what I would do with her sexually. I had to find something that would disgust Michael. She said, okay, if you tell Michael something about yourself that would disgust him. And what I chose, she looked at me and said, why would that disgust him? Because it was about relationships. It wasn't something gross about myself. It was like, this is a belief I have. And she said, why would he find that disgusting? I said, he just got married and I know that. I know that this would not gel with his outlook on life right now. And she turned to him and said, do you agree? And he said, yeah, that what he just said disappoints me immensely. And she accepted that. So the end of that ended with me the instruction of I needed to arouse myself in less than 30 seconds.
Oh, man.
And that was so uncomfortable doing that in front of Michael and in front of the woman. And, I couldn't think of what to do. And I guarantee you what I did was probably the most unsexiest looking thing I've ever done in my life. It was thoroughly embarrassing, but not my most embarrassing moment ever in Ascension. And we'll talk about that later, Mike. So at the end of that got interrupted and Samson came in. And this was my first encounter with Samson, and it was fairly brief. And here's the weird thing about that is he's OSDM, correct?
Yeah, that's what we all think.
Well, he pulled out a computer and he wanted me to use a phone. And I could not remember anyone's phone number that fit the description of like, call one of these people in your life. And I said, seriously, I rely on my phone for that information. I don't have that stored in my brain. He pulls out a computer and opens up his laptop and he says, okay, sign in to the Tension forums. And for those of us who have worked and played on the Tension forums and done stuff there, every now and then you get this weird glitch where it won't sign in and it keeps saying that your time has expired and you have to refresh the CAPTCHA test, like the math equation. It got caught in that loop. So I couldn't sign into the forums, even though I was inside Ascension at the time. So like literally it just all went wrong. And then finally he was like, okay, that's enough of that. And he leads me out of the room. So he walks me into...
Well, hold on. Already, this is different from my second time.
Okay, explain like how you got... Because did you go into the processing room the second time at all?
Yes.
Okay, how did you get there?
Okay, so what happened with me is, we're meeting in the parking lot, and... Well, the parking lot, first of all, is hilarious because I got there maybe like... I was supposed to be there by 10:30. I got there at like 10:20. Mm-hmm. So I was already there on my scooter, just hanging out. A group of people come, and like they're all friends. So they're all talking, and I'm just like doing stuff like on my phone, like just waiting. And more people come, and then all of a sudden I hear like plant, and they all look at me. And I'm like, this is awesome. Everyone thinks I'm a plant, because the cool thing is I figured there was one person there that was a possible plant, because he introduced himself to me and was like, you're Mike, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know who you are. So how could you know who I am unless you're a part of this? You know what I mean? Right. It was like one of those things. So I didn't say anything, because it's like the more they suspect me, the better it's going to be for the story for them. And so I just let it go. I'm like, whatever. So the van comes and they call all of our names, sign the waiver. And once it's time to go in the van, they called one person before me, and it was Lawrence from the forums, and it was his third time. It was my second time, and there were two other people there. It was their second time. One of them was Jonathan from Philly, who flew out for it, and Tamra, who's Scothic on the forums. And Lawrence goes in, and then they call my name, and that's it. They shut the door, and we leave. So it's only us two in the van. So right away, like as soon as the guy shut the door, like I just looked out at everybody like, what the hell is happening? And so we get to the place, and we're lined up outside by the fence, not the door, but like where all the vehicles come in. And so we're lined up there, and there's a security guard there. And so we wait a few minutes, and then Samson comes out. He's like, follow me, gentlemen. And so we follow him into the warehouse, and he starts talking to us. And I think some people got this scene, but they got it at the end. But we walked through, and there were people in chairs, like I think from the previous group. And he's like, you want to see something funny? She believes this is real. And he calls Addison over, and he's like, hey, like, you know, who's Anak? He's like, Anak is the one true God. Like, we hear his voice. And he's like, see, she thinks this is real.
Whoa.
And then like, she's making fun of her. And I want to, okay, so before I go any further, we mentioned this earlier, but I was on a mission with my second time. Like, I wanted to do things so differently. I had, you know, if you saw my hands, I had written all of these things on my hands, because I had written questions like, are they watching us? Can they hear us? And then on my other hand is like, can we go somewhere private? You know, stuff like that, in case people were listening. So I had all these things. I had names. I had other things like, do you know any of these people? And I had all the names from the newsletters. Like I had like Dorothy Jordan and Rosemary Luther, and, you know, John. I had like, do you know, like, are you safe? Do you need help? Like all of these things written on my hands.
Interesting strategy.
Because
good job, man.
Thanks. Because I figured, like, first of all, with my tattoos, it would all blend in, so they wouldn't really see anything different. And number two, because I know last time it was like, they can hear us, they're listening.
Right.
So, okay, well, can they read this from the cameras? You know, that kind of stuff. Everything that I tried to do got foiled, which is something funny because you mentioned that earlier.
I figured that would be, yeah.
Because I had no idea what to expect. Because I didn't read any spoilers. I didn't talk to you. And I figured it would be similar to the first time, where you could still go through those certain rooms and try to unlock things,
right?
Which did not happen at all. So
it's funny. I tried in the processing room, because now there's a box that's locked. I tried with Simon, tried to get into that box.
Nice.
And he informed me that the key is not in the processing room. So because there's a chain dangling in the center of the processing room, and I from a distance, because he had me sit away from it, I thought it was a key at the end of the chain, and it's just a loop at the end of the chain. So I called him over and I asked him, and I said, I'm a curious person, and I'm curious about that box. And he said, oh, glad to hear you're a curious person, but the key to that box is not in this room. So, but anyway, I interrupted you.
It's okay.
Go ahead with your story.
Okay. So, and like I said earlier, my whole mission was to try to do things completely different and to try to break Addison. And I don't mean that to be, like, I'm not talking about in a like completely like jerk way.
No, I understand.
But I wanted, for the story, like I wanted to see what would happen if I was not bowing down to her as overseer, but also not trying to be BOS, not trying to be OSDM, just trying to be like, how many triggers can I pull to see how far she'll go? That was kind of like my mentality.
Okay.
So when we go in there and he's doing this, like instantly that I got like slapped in the face, because like this dude who I don't know has...
You don't mean literally?
No.
Okay. No. Just checking.
But this guy is like treating Addison, overseer, horrible. And it's one of those things where it's like, by default, I've known Addison since like March. So obviously, like, I'm going to have more loyalty to her towards someone I just met that's treating her like crap.
Right.
So when we go in, instantly, like, all of my plans are thwarted, because I'm like, oh man, I have feelings now, kinda. Like, no, I need to fight it, you know? And so he's like joking around and making fun of her, and it's like, and then she starts talking back to him, and he's like, no, put her in the helmet, 15 minutes. They take her from us bring her into the caged area,
Right.
put the helmet on her with 2 of the attendants with her, like doing that. And we're basically just watching and she's screaming. And it's like, oh man.
I think you know now. I got a variation of that scene
Yeah.
much later. Did they prepare her anyway for the helmet? Did they wrap her in anything?
Yeah, they put like something over her and
Okay,
like,
all right.
wrapped her. Yeah.
Right.
So that happened. And then after the helmet treatment, they're like, he was still like, you know, ha ha ha, like whatever. You want to go talk to your precious Addison, go talk to her. So we went and talked to her, and kudos to Lawrence, because I was still in my like, screw Addison, I'm whatever. Like we're going to, you know, do whatever. And like, I was just standing there, like having no sympathy, even though I had sympathy, but I was trying not to have sympathy. But like Lawrence like got right with her, held her hands, like Addison's going to be okay. Like, you know, your Addison is cool. Like everything's going to be fine. And then I was just like, Russell says hi. Like that's, you know,
What?
because I wanted to try to like do anything I could to like mess with her, you know? So it's like, you're the main person that I knew that could connect with her. It wasn't going to be Tom. It wasn't going to be anyone else. Like,
Right.
like it would be you and Morgan. But
Right.
like, because of your meeting, a couple of days before, that's why I
Right.
was like, she walked out and I was like, Russell says hi, you know, like complete like jerk, but like not, you know, but whatever. It didn't do anything. But I brought you up a couple times because that was my whole like thought plan.
Oh, wow.
So after that,
I'm so glad you didn't tell me that before you went.
yeah. So after that, it was Lawrence and I forget if he went in there with me, but the next room for me was the processing room. And that's where I met Simon again. And he was like, why are you here? And I was like, I came back to see you. And he was like, oh, I bet you did. And I was like, he's like, why are you here? I'm like, well, no, I want your job. And because, you know, people respect you. People are talking about you outside of the walls and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, let me tell you something. That might come sooner than you think. And I was like, ooh, I might get Simon's job. But yeah, so it's a very similar story to what you happened, except Addison brought us in there. And Addison had us sit down with her
really?
at the processing room.
Because Addison just dropped me off.
Yeah, so when we were sitting at the table, it was Samson, and I believe Sukai was in there too, and Simon was definitely in there. And Addison was sitting at the table, and she was talking to me, and you mentioned earlier that you brought in a picture, and I said, that's funny, and you'll find out why. And I want to preface this by saying we did not talk about any of this.
No.
But great minds think alike, because I smuggled in a picture of the bear cat, the bear cat. And I printed out 4 different copies of it and hid them all over my body.
Yep.
Because I figured if they pat me down, they'll find this one. If they do this, they'll find this one.
I had
If they
multiple
do this-
copies of the picture of Tom
Yeah.
and Addison together.
Well, and here's where it goes funny. So I had one in my back pocket as an easy access one. So as we're sitting at the table and she's talking, I look around and everybody sees you, but like no one was looking. I pulled it out and I gave it to her. And she opened it up and just stared at it. And she just looked at it and like looked at me with kind of like that shocked, sad face.
I know it well,
And I was
unfortunately.
like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? And so like she looked at that and then she like folded it up and like stuffed it in like into her dress, like into her bra strap. And as she did that, Simon came over, tapped her on the shoulder and like did the hand motion, like give it to me. And I was like, oh crap.
Oh, wow.
So after that, like they took her out and I still had 3 other pieces. I had one in each sock and then I had one in my waistband.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, that's when they had me take off my clothes.
Right.
So somewhere in between there, I don't know if I lost it on the way over or if I lost it when I took my pants off, but the 2 in my socks were gone. So I don't know if they were in my pants, like when I took them off, like
that's
if they got,
interesting.
so I only had one left and I tried to hide it because it was like showing out of my boxers. And I talked to Simon a bit, went to sit down, and that's when Jonathan came in and then Tamara. As either Jonathan or Tamara were talking to Simon, all of the women came over, and they were like, look, we know you have something else. So you can either give it to us now or,
Really?
Yeah. And I was just like, I mean, what are you talking about? And like, look, we know you have something. Either you can give it to us or we can have Simon search you for it. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Here you go. And so I gave that to them. And then, at one point, and the order may not be correct, but at one point I was sitting with Simon. He asked me the same question. Did you see Sentinel? Did you see this room?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
All that's happening. The same thing was happening to me that happened to you, where they were like looking at you and touching you, except they were doing that to my tattoos. So they were grabbing my arms and turning them and like looking and like whispering and making this,
Well,
like
dude,
those
you
kind
have
of
cool
sounds.
tattoos. Come on.
Thanks. And then one of them kept snapping my boxers, like kind of like how like little kids snap bra straps.
Right.
Like she was doing that to my boxers. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, you don't want to see anything that's down there. Like, cause she was doing it from the back, So it's like, that's not a fun place to be right now, because like I'm nervous. You guys threatened me in a roundabout way, and this is not fun. So yeah, so then same thing, like, do you remember her name? I was like, I don't. And honestly, I don't even know if I was ever given it, but whatever, I'm not going to argue. And so then I went with the new person, and then she did my questioning. So after we were processed, Addison spoke to us, they had us there. And one of the things they had us do is there were three of us. They had us get together, similar to what you and Michael were saying, what you said about you and Michael, how you had to get close. We had to form a triangle and hold hands and get closer to one another. Earlier, we mentioned a periscope of Tom Barrow being taken out of the trunk of the OSDM truck. Mm-hmm. And I had said, oh, maybe there's going to be a scene or something like that, like a one night only scene. This comes into play now, because as we're there holding hands with each other, they bring Tom Barrow into the room.
What?
Yeah.
What?
That's exactly what I said. And as he runs to Addison, hugs her, Addison hugs him. They're on the floor, like he's on his knees and like they're bending down, hugging each other. It's like, oh my God, like screaming. And then all of a sudden, Addison just stops, looks at him, pulls away a little bit. It's like, wait, no, you're not my father. You're not my father. And starts yelling at him and starts going nuts. So they grab Tom, and I'm screaming like, it's Tom, Tom. It's not like, it was kind of like when people see celebrities, they probably don't have no idea who you are, but you scream their name anyway. That's how I felt, because I was like, Tom, in this white room in my boxers, like half naked. And they grab Tom and they grab Addison and they tell us to stand against the wall and don't turn around. As that's happening, as Addison is screaming, she screams out my name. Like, she's like, Mike,
oh my
Mike,
God.
Don't let them. Yeah. And here's the thing. When I went through Ascension first, I mentioned on the podcast how when Morgan screamed my name was one of the most effective things because I felt so bad. I don't know if this played on that, but it was I felt the same way. And like, I turned around and like, turn back to the wall. And like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you feel so helpless, And so she's screaming my name, and it was just like, it was just a twist of the knife, Even though I went in trying to break her, like at that point, I was just like, oh my God, I'm doing this wrong. I'm so sorry. And like, she's screaming my name for help, and I couldn't do anything.
I had a moment like that recently, and you know a little bit about it. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but yeah, I understand.
And after she started screaming about how Tom wasn't her father, she was kind of going nuts. And Samson screamed out this Latin phrase and dropped her to the floor.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, it was like some Harry Potter stuff going on.
Oh, it's funny because so many people got there their second time through, and I never witnessed that.
Yeah, it seems the later you went in the run, the more susceptible she was.
And then how did you get out of that room?
I was put against the wall, and then we were put out the door, and then we were facing the wall outside, all with hoods on. And then all of a sudden, someone grabbed me by the back of the neck and led me somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't get the other processing room. I didn't get the scene with Samson because I had heard about things happening where he would make you like post things or log into things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was ready for that. I was like, I have this whole strategy about what I'm going to say, and and it didn't happen. And then from that point, I believe the next room we went to was Professor Appleby, and it was like the black where all the chalk writing was on the wall about "I am Anak, I am home."
Right. One thing I want to say about the processing room was, as Michael and I were in there, because we were the first two in there, and I just want to know if it sounds like it happened to you, that the other people in the group started filing in, and they'd been to the changing room, so they all had the one piece jumpsuit on, and we kept getting the weirdest looks, like, why are the two guys in their underwear? What went wrong? What did they do?
Right. See, we didn't get that many people. Like, I think there was
we got about half the group.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. By the time we were finished, I don't think it was the full group, but I think it was about half the group. And then you're right. I went to the same classroom.
Okay.
And did you have to pass judgment on someone?
Yes. So so we were I forget exactly what he said, but when we were in that chalkboard room, he was saying, find something and tell me. Something along those lines. So I just started reading the walls to him. And then he brought us into the classroom, which was adjacent to that. And he was, or I forget if this was before or after, but he said, find the heart of the room. And
wow, this is very different.
Okay. So we found the heart of the room because, escape room Mike went into play, and it's like, oh, there's an anatomical model. There's a heart right there. Grab the heart. But the stupid part of Escape Room Mike didn't look behind the heart. He just grabbed it. So Tamara went back in and found there was like a piece of paper, and there was like a clue. And my mind is blank about what it said. But in that room also, we sat down. That's where we got our jumpsuits, I believe. And there were two attendants in there, and he had them tell us something that they thought about us, a truth and a lie.
That's all we got in that.
Okay.
So it looks like my scene started right there.
Okay. So they would whisper something to you.
Yes.
And then after they told us what they thought about us, like one of them said, like, I think your tattoos are covering up for something and that you feel on the inside, or something like that. Like, it was something along those lines.
And
what?
Are they?
Shut up. And so then,
wow, he moved on quickly from there.
Yeah, I'm covering up my pale white skin. That's what it is.
Yes, yes, you are.
and so, and then he said something like, one of them has to be judged. They're going to tell you a secret, and you have to judge them.
Yes.
And then they each told us something. And then we had flashlights. And did you have flashlights as well?
Yes.
Okay. So he's like, we need you all to point at the person that you believe is guilty. So me, of course, trying to not do things normal, pointed at the professor. And then the other,
interesting.
The other people, because like, I don't want to get these girls in trouble. And obviously the professor is like a sketchy dude. So I pointed at him, and he's like, no, all of you need to make the same decision. So I was like, guys, let's point it at him. And he's like, we all pointed at him. He's like, what? Me? And got super pissed. And he's like, no. And then he started yelling at the girls, and one of the girls gave themselves up. And they're like, no, they're lying. I told them I'm guilty. I did this. And he's like, fine, you guys go out the door. And so we had to go out, and then we went into the clock room.
Okay, so what happened for us is did you do the red room, the escape room aspect?
I did not do the escape room, but I was in the red room.
All right, I did the escape room portion before getting, if I remember correctly, what you just described. And I think that's why mine was probably half as long. It's because I spent time in that other room.
And maybe I did go in the red room before that. I don't think I did, but because my mind is like...
Because to be totally honest, when I went back into the escape room the second time, one of my thoughts was, why am I here? Like, because I'd heard from so many people that it was going to be so different, and yet I seemed to be traveling basically the same path. And I went from processing, I believe, to the escape room aspect of it, the red room, where you're asked questions, except this time we failed to get out.
Okay.
So, and then we went into the clock room, but the classroom was part of all of that, I think probably before the escape room.
Okay.
But here's the weird thing that happened with us in that room. Michael and I were alone in that room together. And at the end, for the judgment, they each told us a secret, and then we had to judge, and he told us, you have to determine and you have to reach a unanimous decision. So Michael and I talked, and basically what the secrets were was that they had had a sexual encounter with each other.
Right.
Okay, so at first Michael thought I was agreeing with him, and I said, no. It's like with each other, like not that one of them had a sexual digression, like with each other. He was, oh, so I said, so in my opinion, they're both not guilty. But we had been told that we had to find a guilty verdict, and so the whole flashlight thing, I didn't point at either of them, and he got pissed at me for that. And he asked for an explanation from me, and I said, no. It's like they're equals. And I don't believe what they did results in guilt. And he got super pissed at me for that. And that was basically the end of that sequence, that was how we were let out.
And so did he yell at the girls and tell you guys to get out? Okay.
Yeah, and basically he decided that they would both be punished, and they were, screaming, and it basically we were thrown out of that room as it was devolving a bit.
So, I mean, going back to the Red Room, granted, I don't remember if this came before or after, just because my mind was scrambled after that.
Yeah.
But tell me about your Red Room, not the escape room part of it.
Okay, well, here's what happened to me, and I think it's like, look, the logistics of this thing are amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think something might have gone a little wrong. So at one point we were gathered, Michael and I were led to the exterior of the door of what leads to, I guess would be the Five Senses area. And somebody opened the door and looked in and said they're not ready. And then a couple of other guys from our group joined us, and we stood there and we waited. And we were there for a little while. And I wonder now, in reflecting back on this, that we weren't supposed to be there. We were supposed to be led elsewhere, and it just probably wasn't ready or something. There seemed to be something a little glitchy going on. So what happened is eventually they opened up that area, and we all went in, and that's the room where you kneel, and you are introduced to the Book of Anak, and it's actually one of my favorite rooms from the first trip through. And that leads into the Five Senses, which I really, really enjoyed the first time. And to be totally honest, Mike, I was so looking forward to going through again. I really liked the sensations and the physical challenges of that aspect of my first trek through. So I was really looking forward to that. But we were standing outside, and at this point was after the clock room, and the older woman from inside the clock room was walking down the hallway. I tried to engage her. I walked over and I told of course there was sort of like a guy who was handling us and making sure we were staying in place. And I asked him, I said, can we help her? And he said, no. And if you speak to her, she will not reply. And I said, but she looks frail. Can we do something for her? He said, no, there will be no reply. And so I started inching my way away from the group, trying to get over to her, and no acknowledgement of me, no looking in our direction, and she just kind of shambled by. So there seemed to be no interaction to be had there. And this all happened while we were waiting to go into like the Five Senses area. And then finally we go into the Five Senses area, and there's, I think, 5 or 6 of us in that area. And Michael and I are off to the side, and then he starts his speech about the senses and, the Book of Anak. And Addison walks into the room and stops the sequence. And she says, Michael, Russell, you know how this journey ends, don't you? If you wish to continue, which personally I did, you can continue. Or would you like to be shown something different? The fact that Addison walked into the room that way and literally looked at Michael and I and went, Michael, Russell, I got the hint that they wanted us to leave the room. was kind of what I felt like they were. And then the sequence that happened afterwards, I know they wanted us to leave the room. And so we walked out, and Addison said that we were going to be shown something different, that she appreciated our devotion or, our loyalty, and that we had proven that, we were supportive of the OOA. And she said, but I need you to do something for me. And she handed over hoods. And actually, one of the handlers, I think, put Michael's hood on. And she handed me a hood and said, please put this on, Russell. And I put on the hood, and she started to lead me. And she says, you just need to follow me. So she leads me, and she says, okay, Russell, there's a step up. I stepped up, and I stepped into sand. So I knew I was back in that red room. And, she led me forward very carefully, because I know there's stones on the floor and there's tripping hazards. And, so she was being safety conscious. And, she parked me someplace. And she said, you just need to stand here for a moment. And I know that Michael was not near me. I could, how you feel a physical presence.
Yeah.
So the door closed, and you just said your mind is a jumble. Parts of this are a jumble, and I think you're about to learn why.
Wow. It's okay, man. We're all family.
This is not going in the podcast.
Oh, it should, though. This is awesome. This is for her.
Wow, I'm surprised at the emotion I'm feeling right now. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Why is that there? Dude. So I get the sense that she's close, and she starts pulling my hood off, and I believe what she said is, Russell, are you listening? She pulls the hood off, and I look up, and in front of me, there is the majority of the entire cast of Ascension.
Wow.
Standing directly in front of me, bathed in red light. And there's a semicircle, and they're all staring at me. And Addison is dead center in the front, and she is holding the stuffed cat.
Oh.
And I think I literally probably said out loud, like, whoa. And I don't know how to say this. It's like she challenged me. And what she did is she said, Russell, your words have brought many people to the OOA, and your words have drawn attention, and your words have, been there for others to guide them. And she said, fuck. And she said a few words like that to me. And then Mike, they played a montage of my voice from the podcast.
What?
And it was comments I'd made about the OOA and comments I'd made about what the OOA has given, to you and me. I am so embarrassed that I sound like this right now.
Don't. It's an emotional thing.
And I'm listening, and this thing felt like it went on forever, man. And it's all these comments from past podcasts, and it ended with my comments that I had repeated in various forms of my support of the tension experience and Ascension, and the fact that I felt it was important, and the fact that I needed to go back, and I kept wanting to return, and the feeling that this was important. And you know me, I honestly believe all of that.
Yeah.
So it ends. And during this, I know why I'm so emotional right now, is because listening to that with all of those faces staring at me, because they were the faces I was talking about.
Yeah, you directly impacted them, just like they're impacting you.
So it ends, and, Addison makes comments about the words and the fact that through this whole journey, our words, Mike, your words and my words have been part of this journey for a lot of people. And she looked at me and she said, so now the OOA, like, what is the OOA? And I wish I could remember exactly how she phrased it, but she wanted my take on what it meant. And she looked up and she said, Russell, we're listening to you now.
Wow.
And she went silent. And so I had to explain what I thought all of this meant.
Damn, dude.
And during the whole recording of my voice coming back, I just started to tear up, and tears were just streaming down my face. And basically what I said is, I paraphrased what I just said a moment ago, in the fact that I said, look, I keep coming back, and I want to come back. And I looked at Addison and I said, and it's not because of you. It's not. It's bigger than that. It's like, whatever this is, whatever this journey is for the people who are involved in this and have been involved and are just now becoming involved, like what you are doing, all of the talk about social media and presence and being connected to your life, I said, you are providing something that is reflecting something in each of the people who come through this. And you're reflecting a portion of their life back to them. And if it makes them think, that's an achievement. If it makes them be present and have a realization about all of the distractions that they have in their world, that's an achievement. Okay, whatever I said in that room, Mike, was not nearly as eloquent as I just put that. Because I was an emotional mess. But that's what I tried to get out, was the fact that whatever they were doing, and I looked up and, Andrew was there.
Alice?
Yes, who tried to be, who gave me that weird moment in my first time through where he came over to me and he said, you're going to be okay. This will get easier. You will be fine through this. So he was there. Some of the women that you've encountered both times through tension were there. Like, there were so many people in the room staring at me. So this ended, and she said, Russell, like, look, if you notice, like, we're all here, and there's one space to my right side, and the question for you now is, would you like to stand beside me? And this is a moment when I question my decision, Mike, because I hesitated. I paused, and I said, actually, I didn't say anything, but in my head, I said to myself, the OOA is an organization that has had a hand in some very nefarious things, including murder. So do I want to stand at the right side of this woman who is supposedly the head of this organization now? And my first inclination was to say no. That was my gut. But my head kicked in and went, Addison is the reason I have come as far as I have.
Right.
And if I'm going to continue following her and be supportive of her, I need to say yes to this, even though my gut is telling me to say no. So I stood by her side.
Her right side?
Her right side.
Seems like it's a little crowded at this point.
There was a space.
Well, I don't mean right then and there. Because like we mentioned earlier, someone else was asked to be her right hand.
Yeah.
So either one of you is moving to the left, or there's going to be a Spartacus type battle for Addison's right.
I am Spartacus.
Okay.
So that was a really heady, emotional, trippy moment for me, because it's sort of the culmination of everything I feel, and it's the conflict I feel. And I've said this to you privately. I said, that is a moment where I don't know if I made the right decision. I don't know if I did.
We'll find out tomorrow, maybe.
Possibly. So I took the position by her side, and at this point the door opened, And I was now standing with everyone else of the OOA. They let Michael in. And out of respect for Michael, I will not say what was done and said while he was there, but he received a similar choice. And that's all I'll say, because out of respect for Michael. But, you know, Michael also had that intimidating moment of revealing that room and everyone in the room staring. And at this point, I was there with them. So Michael received something a little bit different. I'm not going to go into details about that. And that was basically my red room.
Your red room experience sounds so rad. And mine was rad to me, but the complete opposite of what happened to you.
Wow.
So the same thing led into there. There's a step, you have a hood on. And as I'm standing there, the hood comes off, and about a few inches in front of my face is Tom Barrow. He's the one who took my hood off, I think.
Wow.
Standing next to Tom Barrow and behind him are OSDM. So there was Suit Guy, there was Samson, and then there was this random like phantom type person in a mask that I saw him wandering the halls a couple times.
Oh, interesting.
It's just them. And do you see movies like it's a movie, like it's in so many movies where the hero is kidnapped and he's hooded and the hood comes off and all the villains are standing there staring at him?
Yes.
That's what it felt like. I was terrified. I was like legit thought I was going to get my ass handed to me. Like all of a sudden, all the crap I talked caught up to me. I felt like I was like, I'm going to get beat down by Tom Barrows for all the crap I talked. Now I'm saying that because you mentioned that Tom emailed you earlier in the day.
Yes.
He emailed me as well. And with a link to Addison's diary saying like, find my daughter. Her name's
Right.
Addison. We think most people get that email.
Yes.
I replied to him telling him what I thought about him. Which hasn't been really a secret if you've listened to the podcast. I basically said, like, who are you really? Like, you're probably not even Addison's dad. Like, you know, blah, blah, blah.
And even I agree that his methods, I think, have been inefficient, to put it kindly.
Yeah. And so he then started talking to me. He's like, hello, Mike. You know, like totally like, you're screwed right now. And I mean, I felt screwed. I said it, I was terrified, like right there. And he's like, you have no idea. You have no idea on anything that's going on. This goes so much further than you can ever realize. And then this happened. I'm going to get off the mic and come to you. And like, so, because this is what I wonder what the surveillance footage looked like at this point. So, okay. So you're me. I'm going over to you.
All right.
Okay, so now I'm near Russell's mic. So, okay, like face me.
All right.
So I'm Tom and you're me. And he's like,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So if you heard that slap, I'll go back to my mic. Okay, I'm back.
Holy shit.
So if you go back.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say shit.
But he grabbed my face, as you might have heard that slapping sound, grabbed my face and pulled me in a little bit. And he's like, even if you tell people about this, no one's going to believe you.
And the ending of that confrontation with him, he looked at me right in the eye and said, thanks for the email. And the hood went right back on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that must have been freaking intense in that moment.
Yeah. And it's just like, that sent off so many different things in my mind because, okay, first of all, Tom's with OSDM. What if he was been a part of this the whole time? You know, like what if he's OSDM and he's just playing a part to try to like, you know, and it's like so many different things. Yes, because why else would he be with OSDM? And why would he be in the front of OSDM? Only leaders go in the front. So what if he's Horace? Or what if he was Benny? You know, like there's so many like things. Like who is he at this point? Like it's all an act. It's all an act.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Yes. And as far as I know, I don't think anybody else got that scene.
I've never heard anyone else mention encountering Tom there.
Because even the people that I went with for the second time, they said they got the cast.
Right.
But I did get something similar to your red room later on, except it was a completely pitch black room. And Addison led me in there, and she said something very similar to me. Is like, your voice has brought in many people through these walls, you know, thank you. And then I didn't realize it because it's pitch black, but there was probably about 10 to 15 people behind me. Each one of them said glory be after that.
Oh, that's chilling.
Yeah, it was one of the coolest things.
That sounds awesome.
And I probably had that stupid smile you talk about because like it was such a touching moment. You know, it's like, wow, like, you know, we're just two dudes who do a podcast, like, and talk about things and nerd out over them, and like, you know, and you care, you know, thank you. Like, showing your appreciation like that, that's incredible to me.
Yeah, I felt the same way after that scene. I really did. It was just hearing, you know, the quotes that they pulled about me, like from what I had said, because, you know, I speak honestly, and yeah, it was just so moving.
After that, I went to, well, like I said, I don't remember the order, but I do know after the Professor Appleby, I went to the clock room, and that was the only thing that was really duplicated from the last time. So we went through the clock room, and so after that, I believe we went into the office / the mirror room. I forget. We went in there a couple times. One of the times we went in there, there was a guy with a beard, and he had the attendants like say things to us, and they would report back to him like no reaction, and they would say things like, I forget exactly what they said, but they gave us number grades on a certain things.
I've heard of other people getting that sequence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then there was another time we went into that room, and there was a cop talking to people, and Addison made them leave. Yeah, it was really weird, like, and I can't picture the order right now, but it was strange. It was a cop in uniform.
Right.
And from that office, that's when we had kind of like the behind the scenes look at stuff.
All right. I also got the office, and it's funny that we are both having problems. And look, I tried to write down the order as soon as I walked out, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. But Michael and I also got the office sequence, except we got pulled into that office, and it was Addison sitting at the desk, and she like pulled out our belongings, and we changed clothes at that point.
That happens later for me.
And that was the moment where she said, look, just, put your clothes back on. And that's why I want to say that this was after the Red Room, is because that's when we have accepted, a judging, I don't want to say exactly what happened with Michael, but
right.
At that point, she had both of us change back into our normal clothes. Again, we spoke about that Periscope earlier. In that room, she wanted us to know that, she didn't remember writing a lot of the diary. She pulled out the diary. I had never seen the diary. She pulled it out, and it was the first time I'd ever seen it in person. And she talked about she can speak foreign language, which she doesn't know how she learned. She believes that the OA put those in her. She's not sure how. But she wanted us to know that she was aware that the helmet had been used. She was aware that they had messed with her mind, that her brain had been altered. She was aware of all of this. And yet, she is in control. She wanted us to know that she was not some naive, brainwashed girl. That was the lesson that she needed us to understand. That she understood that she had been messed with, that bad things had been done, and she was aware of all of it. And yet, there is a purpose to her position. And she has a mission or an agenda or something. And she didn't make that clear, but that's what I walked out of that room with.
See, when we were in that room, she started glitching out a little bit. And one of the things that she said to me was one of the, like, I will never forget this. And it was like, it's so touching in like such a cute and nerdy way. But so, sorry, before we get to that point, I was alone in that room for a second, because the first time we were in that room, I believe we were put from that room, from either with the professor or the cop, we were put into like a TV room. There were three of us, the three people that had gone the second time. We were put hoods on, and we were told not count to 20 and take the hood off. I counted to 20, and we took the hood off, and then there was only 2 people in the room. It was only me and Jonathan. So they took Tamara out. And this might have been when the Red Room stuff happened, but for them, but I'm not sure. So then they take Jonathan out. So then it's just me. And in the TV rooms, there's plexiglass and there's locks on them. So I go into escape room Mike mode and try to undo the combinations. I tried 242. I tried 135. I just tried random numbers I remembered from various puzzles. And all of a sudden the door opens and Suit Guy comes in and pushes himself against me. So I'm in a corner, and that room, it's a tiny box. Like, it's super claustrophobic. So it's him like pushing at me and staring down at me because he's taller than me. And so I'm staring at him, and just out of like random, like, nervousness, like I just start talking. I'm like, can I speak? Do these locks unlock? Do you have the combination? Like, what's your name? Who are you? Just stupid conversation, and of course he's not saying anything. He's staring me down, like mad dogging me. And all of a sudden I notice him blinking a lot. And I was like, oh my God, wait, is he trying to give me the combination to the lock? Because he's like doing it deliberately and stopping and then starting again. So I do that. I try to do the combinations. None of them work. And as I'm looking at him to see if I can get the combination from his blinking, I notice that it's possible that he's not giving me a combination, and that he's trying to get rid of the tears, because he had tears streaming down his face.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
man, I have heard of this room. I wanted to see this room so badly because, number one, the way someone described their encounter in that room, it sounded beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it sounded very intense. I wanted to see this room so badly, and I never had the chance.
But here's the thing about Suit Guy. Like, it seems he's OSDM. Like, him and Samson are behind things. But why was he crying to me? Like, does he not want to be a part of this? Is he Jack? Like, is he like worried because he realizes what's happening and he's too high up and he's scared for his life? There's so many different theories that went to my head. Like, wow, is it guilt? Is it happiness that he's alone with me? I don't know. Like, there could be so many different things. But after that room, they let me out and back into the office, and I was in there alone. So again, went into escape room mode, and I see this like thing on the table, and I open it up and realize it's Addison's diary. Wow. And again, I wish I could see the footage of this, because I felt like my face was like had the hugest like saucer eyes, because again, I had never seen it. I had never touched it. Like, holding that in my hand, I was like, holy crap. So then Addison came back in with Jonathan and Tamara, and she sat down at the desk, and I was like, Addison, I found your diary. This is your diary. You wrote these words. And she's like, you're Mike. And I was like, yeah, you're Addison, AKA Gatekeeper 2, AKA 2, AKA Overseer, AKA the person who killed 4. And she was like, I remember 4. And I was like, you killed her. but like, I kept trying to do it to like jog her memory. Mm-hmm. And she looked at it and she's like, I don't remember writing this. And she would like shake her head and be like, hi guys, I'm Addison. And he's like, you're Mike. And I was like, yeah, Addison, like, I'm friends with Russell. He gave you the bear or the cat. And she was like, the bear cat. And I was just like, oh. Like, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I was like, the most cutest / like stab to the heart. Like, I was just like, I can't believe you just said that, because it's so adorable, and it's not supposed to be adorable. Like, based on the connotation, and it killed me, man. Like, she said it with a smile. Like, I can picture it so clearly. It's like the bear cat, and it's like, oh my God, Addison, wake up.
Wow.
Yeah. And
then from there, did you go into the behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, I think it was either in between the first time with the beard or the cop, and then that time, because so that's when we saw people going through, and that's where we went into a circle, and we were able to have Addison ask a question, and we were able to pick the oracle.
Well, basically what Mike is describing is there was a behind the scenes sequence where I know Michael and I got this, and it sounds like you got something very similar, is she wanted to point out that there is a reason for Ascension. There is a reason for this event. And they were trying to find the strong people, the strongest of the patrons who came through each night as potential people for candidates for Ascension. During the evening, they would test your senses, and she asked me to pull back this curtain, and it revealed the area where they dipped your hands into something for you to alter the sense of touch. And they showed us the area where people were struck a couple of times with what looked like a batch of sticks or like a light, something to tap them about the sense of touch as well. And they were hooded, and they had the earbuds in. It's the stuff that we experienced our first time through. And then we were led into an area which, near the end of that sequence, you're led into an area and you're sat down and you're sort of held until the final sequence. Now, the person who's chosen for potential ascension is chosen during that sequence of time. Also, Mike, at that point, we were told, Michael and I, that we had to ask a question to help choose the next person, the next candidate. And so there was a person in that room, and Addison walked over and raised their hood. Michael and I had decided on a question, and we asked the question, and she thanked the guy for answering the question. She turned to us and she said, "How do you feel he answered?" And we felt that he answered very well. And it was kind of a generic question that we had, but the fact that he went where he did immediately, it was a very emotional response, we felt. So he was the candidate chosen for Ascension that night. And then also, she led us aside to a small room where there's a video camera. And she stated to us that it was her idea that the candidates for Ascension would be able to record a final statement for family and friends, and that this was the room where it happened. She tried to emphasize that they are about kindness. They are about generosity. This is not some, like evil agenda, the way some people have painted it. That they do take into consideration human feelings and emotions, and that was part of the process. So she showed us that room, and then we were led away from that as well.
Yeah, and this very similar things happened to me.
So near the end of this, Mike, Addison led me away and Michael away, and she said, "I want you to witness something." And so she led us down this long corridor, and we sort of, it was the corner of the area where Ascension ceremony took place. And we were led out toward the back of the compound, and there was this gate and stairs leading downward, and we looked over, and there was people staring at this bathtub. And in the bathtub, there were two women, naked. And there was, I don't know what was going on in that bathtub, but it seemed ritualistic. And I was watching, I was looking, and Addison kept saying, "Follow me, follow me." And so I turned away from it, and right as I turned away, I hear this woman scream my name at the top of her lungs, just, "Russell!" And I turn around, and one of the naked women has crawled out of the tub and has her arms reaching out almost toward the sky, and is looking at me, and is like reaches upward because I'm on the level above her, and there's a chain link fence between us, and she approaches me and she's reaching for me, and I go back and I start reaching toward the chain link fence because I don't know if we can touch the chain link fence. I don't know what that's going. This was totally stunning to me that this happened because I didn't understand it, and Addison was walking by, and I wanted to make this connection because she seemed distressed, and Addison pulled me. Addison grabbed my arm and pulled me away from her and said, "No, what you need to see is over here," basically. She led me away from that, and I'm looking back, and the woman looked lost. But Addison pulled me completely away from that area and to an open door in the back, and she said, "I want you to witness this." And it was the Sentinel, the end of Sentinel, which is where Sentinel dies.
Okay.
Except we are witnessing it from the front of the vehicle, so the headlights are shining directly in ours, so we can't see it clearly. And at one point, they lead one person away from that sequence, and Addison approves him. And I realize that that is the guy who was sitting in the chair, and he's the person that we approved to be the candidate for Ascension. He's the one who's marked to die if Ascension doesn't work. And he was led right by us and off to, and I imagine, probably the room where he was given the chance to make his last statement. I don't know that for sure, but I think that would make sense at that point. So the other people are let in from the Sentinel scene, and they are led toward the ceremony room for Ascension, and Addison pulls us back. And she basically states, I'm sorry you needed to witness that, but I wanted you to witness that. And I believe that she said something along those lines. And then she said, follow me. And she leads us over toward the end of the room for where the Ascension ceremony takes place. And she says, I need you guys to go inside, and I need you two to find seats in the front row. You have to be in the front row for me. And so Michael and I went in and we found seats in the final sequence in the front row. And I'll tell you in a moment why. But where did you go in that area?
So I walked by with Addison that same spot. That's the bathtub scene. And I noticed that on the same level, it looked like some of the people that were going through in their first time were watching from the other side on the same level I was at. So they were looking down at it happening. And we were walking by, and I didn't know what was happening. I didn't realize until I looked over and I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's people down there. And so I was watching. As I was walking by, one of the girls was just staring at me from down below. And like, you're pretty far away, but you can tell when someone's looking at you.
Oh, yeah.
And so she was just staring at me, and I kept like looking back and like trying, I would look forward to make sure I wouldn't trip over anything. And then I would look back to see what was happening. And it was basically like time stood still for them, because every time I looked back, they were just staring at me. And so Addison takes me somewhere, and then it might have been her office. It might have been just down the road or down the hallway. But she ends up taking me back, and she's like, follow me. So we go back, and she gets to the gate, the opening of the gate, unlocks it, and she's like, watch your step. And we go downstairs, and we go to the bathtubs where the dead girl is in the tub, and then there's the other girl like standing outside of it. And I get there, and it's OSDM, and it's Samson and Suit Guy.
Wow.
And Suit Guy tells me, he's like, take off your clothes. And like, it hit me. I was like, oh crap. And so I take off my clothes. I keep my boxers and socks on. He's like, what are you, shy? Everything. And I was just like, oh
wow.
And so just to try to like calm my nerves, I made a stupid joke, and I was like, I apologize for what you guys are all about to see, and dropped my boxers. And took off my socks. And then, so I'm standing there naked, and they're like, get in the tub. And there's a girl in there, and she's naked, and her legs are on either side. So she's basically spread eagle. So I'm like, this is weird. I mean, it's weird. And, it's like, I have some modesty. So I'm like, I'm going to just put my back to her. I hope they don't make me turn around and face the dead girl spread eagle in my face, And so I do that, and they don't say anything. And then the other naked girl comes over, and it's so hard to process, because it was just, I had no idea what was going on. I heard someone say, we're going to cleanse you of your sins. And then all of a sudden I hear like breaking and splashing. I'm being doused in blood, which I'm assuming is the dead girls.
Right.
So they Elizabeth Bathory'd me in that tub.
Oh man.
And I'm just sitting there like, cause it was cold, it's you're in the warehouse, and the blood was cold. So I'm like just sitting in the tub, I'm spitting blood out cause I got it in my mouth, and they're like, get out, put your clothes on. And in my mind, I'm like, this is disgusting. Like, this is gross. Like, this is like so yucky feeling, you know? It's like I have wet, you know, when you get out of a shower and you don't dry off properly and you put clothes on, you have that weird, wet, sticky feeling.
Yeah.
That's what it was, except it was blood. So like in my mind, I'm like, do you guys have a towel? This is gross, you know, like, but.
This really shook you up, didn't it?
No, it was just unexpected.
Okay.
You know,
right.
like, and, you know, I put my clothes on and Addison took me, and that's where she brought me, and we watched the BOS scene. And I was so gross and sticky, and she looked very uncomfortable with what was happening in the BOS scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I kept telling her, I'm like, you can make this stop. You're in charge of this place. There's an open gate right there. We can leave right now if you want, you know? And then like, I was holding her, like she got like up close to me. So I was like hugging her, and I was still wet and sticky. And so I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm so gross and sticky right now. So I did one of those weird half hugs to her because I didn't want her or her face or her hair to get bloody. And so Addison, if you're listening to this, it has nothing against you. I wanted to hug you more, but I didn't want you to get sticky. And then at that point, I believe she led us into the blessing room. Like, we didn't go inside of it, but we went to the room directly next to it.
Okay.
And so we saw darkness. We saw the guy come out with the tools. And I believe that's when they led us to the interview room. And so when we were in the interview room, there was already someone in there, and we were told that the chosen one should come in, and that's when we make him do an interview, and it needs to be heartfelt. I didn't see that. I was taken out before then.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
But I think that Jonathan and Tamara said that did happen with them in there. So I forget where I went after that. But then basically Addison took me, sat me in the front row for the Ascension. And I mean, you said you had something to say. There's a reason you're in the front row.
Yeah, was there any interaction with you during the ceremony?
Yes.
Okay, because what she did is, near the beginning of the ceremony, before she started making her speech, she came over and she looked down at one point during the hallway, like somewhere during the night, she looked at me and she looked at my chest and she saw the yellow flower. And she just kind of looked up at me and she smiled. And I knew that she was aware that it was there. So at the beginning of the ceremony, she walks over to Michael and me, and she looks down at me, and she very genuinely, gently smiled at me, and she said, "May I?" And she reached down and she took the flower. And it's such a silly gesture. But just the way she smiled, and she was reaching, she's like, and when she said, "Man," I said, "Of course, I brought it for you." And so she took the flower and she held it during the ceremony. And at least I know that connection was made. I don't know what it meant to her, but I'm so glad that I did that.
Right.
And that a connection was made. Yeah, I got to admit, I'm really envious of the bathtub scene with you.
Oh, I'm not done.
Because there's something about my choice, like I said earlier, that I went with my head instead of my gut. When Addison called me, when I was having the bad day and she was asking about me, one of the things I said is, I don't know if you realize this, but, when I came back, I got very, very quiet during the second half of our night. And I said, there's a reason for that, is because I am now doubting some of the things that happened. I said that to her in the phone call, and she sort of didn't really want to delve into it, I don't think. But that's it. And so I felt by making the decision, the thing that's sticking with me is the cleansing of the sins line that you said, is because I think, I don't know, there's something about that hitting me really hard right now. Because I wanted something from my second time through that I don't think happened for me. And I don't know how to express that differently. And I wanted a catharsis. I wanted something, and I don't think that happened, because what happened for us in the Ascension scene is Addison stated to the entire group there that there were two people she wanted to introduce as new members of the OOA. And she said, Michael and Russell, would you please stand? And we received a round of applause, and then we sat down, and then we witnessed the Ascension scene. And that was the end of the evening for me.
So my Ascension scene was a little bit different. And I guess I'm not a member of the OOA because she didn't say that. But during the whole Ascension, during her whole speech, like, she looked at me so many times and would walk by me and just, like, we'd make eye contact, and I'd give her, like, one of those, like I want to do something, but I know I can't kind of faces.
Right.
And she would just kind of give me that Addison look where it's like, I know you want to do something, but thank you, but, you know, I know you can't either, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But before it started, there was basically not a recreation, but she said something similar that she said to me in that room with all the glory bees. She had me stand up, and she's like, this is Michael Fontaine. Like, his words have brought so many people to us, like, through these walls, et cetera, et cetera. All of you need to bow to him right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you say this didn't affect you. I can see it in your face.
Dude, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Of course it affected me.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, earlier you said that, but I like, in this conversation, I know you well enough that this got to you.
okay.
That was a good moment for you, wasn't it? Or an emotional moment?
No, not emotional at all. But I mean, people bowed down to me. Like, finally in my life, I've gotten to a point where people can bow down to me.
Oh man.
But I mean, the thing is, it's like being in there, like, all bloody, having people look at me and be like, what the hell happened? And then getting that sort of acknowledgement. Yeah, that's the word. Brain fart. You know, again, I mean, yeah, of course that got to me. Like, that's like, wow, you know, like, there's no amount of thank yous that I could possibly say. You know, there aren't words. Like, I sent them an email as soon as I got home saying, like, you know, thank you just doesn't seem enough for, like, what happened tonight, you know, like, because it was incredible. Like, it was incredible my second time.
Yeah.
And my Ascension even played out different than the first time. Yeah, I don't even think they killed the person we chose. Like, instead, one of the attendants killed the other attendant.
Oh, wow.
And the plant. So there were two murders, just not the people that were supposed to be. But yeah, even seeing the different things that they've done since we went through the first time, so cool. Like, it's just like they kept growing, and I just wish it didn't end.
Yeah, and you know, something that neither of us have mentioned during this is that at one point during the behind-the-scenes stuff, I think both of us wound up in the control room.
Yeah.
And, you know, there wasn't necessarily a huge amount of information given, but it was the acknowledgement sort of like, we're breaking this wall for you now.
Right.
And we saw the bed of screens where they kept, you know, keep tabs on everyone moving through the event. And, you know, there are so many things like that during the second time through that were so, you know, just such a revelation as to the logistics of how it operates and all of that. But yeah, I'm just, you know, my gut, that moment of gut versus head, which, you know, I wrestle with that. You know, like, you know, it's a conversation we've had about other events, Mike, and you know, that's they somehow, I don't think it was deliberate, but they got to me at a core disconnect in my own being, and they played out something which to this day I'm still questioning a little bit about. It's not whether or not did I do the right thing, because I don't think it's about being right or wrong. But I guess the question is, which should I have followed? And should, to me, is a very dangerous word.
Right.
Because if you start thinking about what should be done by yourself or others, that means you're making judgment calls you shouldn't be making rather than just acting.
But your path is your own, Russell.
I know that, but I don't know. It's just like the second time through, I slept so hard that night. I was so drained.
And that's how it makes us feel. It's just silence. We don't even know what else to say anymore.
However, we do have to do a little bit of a wrap up because I've been back since then.
Oh, that's right.
During when we were talking about the periscopes and the lead up to whatever is happening, the final weekend of Ascension, I said that Addison had called me and said that she'd not been 100% honest with me. Well, I left, we were at an event called Heritage Scare, and I left that event a little bit early because Addison had set a time for me to go down to the compound and meet. I was driving there, Mike, and I don't know if I've mentioned this to you. I got a phone call on the way down there.
Oh, no.
And it was Addison, and she said, "I'm sorry, but I think I might have made a mistake. I believe I have gotten you into trouble. You need to be careful tonight."
Wow.
And I didn't know how to take that. And I said that I think the same probably applied to her. And I said, "I'll see you soon." And she said, yes. So that time I'm at the lot, and there was this weird straggler there who thought he had a ticket for the final time slot, but he wasn't sure. It was very weird. And the security guy was there. And so I got my time, and I'm waiting. I'm talking to the security guy, and we're talking about, some of the stuff. And apparently they found a stolen car in the parking lot or something at one point. So the security guard was, kind of telling me a couple of things that had been happening behind the scenes. And so the van pulls up, and basically I'm the only one. Like, he says, "Russell, you need to get in the van." So I put on the hood, we go through, and immediately, Mike, I know that the route was different. Mm-hmm. Because, I've done that route twice now, and I know there's lots of turns between the parking lot and the compound. And so the van stops. I hear the door open. The hood is pulled off. They said, "Get out of the van." And I get out, and I'm at a gas station. And several people have gotten variations of this event. And so and some of it is on the forum, but some of it I have not talked about publicly yet. And I'm going to kind of nutshell some of this. But I get out, and they said, "Wait here." And they slam the door and they drive away. So I'm at an abandoned gas station somewhere nearish downtown Los Angeles. And the only thing that's around me is a white cargo van covered in graffiti. And I'm thinking, is that it? Like, do I approach the van? So I'm looking at the van. The driver's window is open in the van. And I slowly start to creep toward the van. And then this part of me went, no, I am not approaching a graffiti-covered white cargo van in an abandoned parking lot somewhere in downtown Los Angeles. I'm not going to do this. So a horn honks. And I look over, and there's a car sort of hidden behind one of the pump island areas. And I realize, okay, well, that's obviously what I'm supposed to go to. And Mike, we've known each other long enough that I think you understand that I have an awkward side.
No.
Thank you for humoring me. I'm a bit of a klutz sometimes. I can be very awkward and fumbling at times.
I'm really going to enjoy what you say next, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
This is my most embarrassing tension experience moment. The car horn honks, and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to go over there. What I don't realize, because it's a gray parking lot and the light is not, there's no lights on in the actual gas station. So I don't realize how close I am to the island for the gas pump.
Mm-hmm.
So I take a step forward, and my toe catches the island, but I don't step on it firmly, and I literally careen forward.
Oh, no.
And I am heading into a face plant, and I manage to catch myself before I actually slam my face into the ground. And I push myself back up really quickly, and I balance myself, and I take a step forward, except by that point, I had pushed myself far enough that the next step is off the island. So it's half a foot lower than where I'm standing, and I literally stumble forward, losing my balance, flailing my arms in the air, just about to fall flat on my face. I managed to recover, and I'm doing the classic stance of like my legs are spread apart, my arms are out wide, like, okay, I didn't fall flat on my face. And I look up, and Samson is standing next to the car.
And he's probably like, this is the guy?
Yeah. So I walk over, and I just like, hi. And he's like, hello. So are you thirsty? So I'm like, yeah, I'm a little parched. I think we might go buy a drink. And I get in the car, and some people have received the scene. It's been talked about on the Tension Experience forums. Basically, he goes to a convenience store and buys me a soda. You will truly appreciate this. I'm more of a Pepsi guy, and they didn't have any cold Pepsi, so I go over and I get a Coke, and Samson is wandering through the store a bit, so I go to Samson, and he's in the candy bar aisle, and he picks up a Snickers.
Ah.
And he turns to me, and he looks me dead in the eye, and he points at me with the Snickers, and he goes like, I hear you're more of a Kit Kat man.
That's amazing.
And I looked at him, and I said, yes, I am. Like, Snickers. And he goes, and he buys me the Coke, and he buys himself a Snickers.
Oh, my God.
I was smiling because I was like, oh, if Mike were here, he would be jumping up and down.
That's
with
incredible.
Joy. So, yes, Samson is apparently Team Snickers.
Samson, anything I might have said about you kicking me off the forums and banning me, all is forgiven just based off that.
So in the car, the dialogue leading to the convenience store is basically about power. He asks me like what I feel the source of power is. And he gives examples like, is it knowledge? Was it fire when man began? And he's talking about possible sources of power. When we get back in, he says the source of power is data. And why do you think Google, Facebook, why do you think all these organizations are after our information? Because they want to target ads. And he said that, like, look, Russell, I know more about you now because I just bought you that. And I try to engage him in conversation, and I know other people have tried this. He doesn't engage in conversation well. So I said, well, look, I've worked for large corporations. I know the process of gathering information for the purpose of targeting people. And he had no response. So he turned on the radio, or I'm sure it was a CD, and a song starts to play, and he starts to sing. And the song is Straighten Up and Fly Right, which is an old Nat King Cole popular tune. And I know most of the song. And so I think, okay, fine, I'm going to sing with him. So I start singing with Samson, Straighten Up and Fly Right. And, it's a song about lies and mistrust. And it's a song about people, or animals actually, betraying each other for what they need. And I'm like about halfway through this song, I look over and Samson is staring at me. Straighten up and fly right. And I realized like, oh, I think this is what Addison was trying to warn me about, is that Samson is not what I was supposed to be getting tonight.
Oh, okay.
And Samson either intervened or something, because I didn't get Addison, and Addison was the one who said she needed to see me. So he drives to the compound, and, he knocks on the door. We walk up and knocks on the door, and Mary Lynn answers. Well, pardon me. No, one of the handlers answers, but Mary Lynn is there. And immediately, anytime we walk into a room, everyone faces the wall. Every time Samson enters, we entered a hallway, and Miles was there, and Miles faced the wall. We walked through processing. Simon, everyone turned away. The women stood up and started heading toward the wall, and we literally walked in one door and walked out one door. And as I'm walking out the door, I hear Samson going, everybody back to work. And we walk down the hallway, and Samson is being pretty quiet during a lot of this. He turns to me and says, I want to show you something. And we turn a corner, and it's that circle of chairs where you choose the person who's the candidate for Ascension. And Addison is dealing with those candidates. And he said, I want you to see something. He walks over, And before he engages with Addison, he looks at me like this really snide expression, like, watch this. And she, like you said, she answered a question about Anak. Anak is the one true God. Why are we searching for the Ascension? Are we choosing an oracle? And because when this communication happens, when the right one is found, Anak will begin communicating with us. And then he looks at me, and Samson just says, see, she believes all this. And I have a moment where I make eye contact with Addison, and she doesn't signal me, she doesn't do anything. She just looks at me for a second, and then she turns to Samson and she goes, why wouldn't I believe this? He calls for the helmet like he did with you. And she is screaming. They put her in the chair. They wrap her in an orange cloth. They place the helmet on her, and she's completely covered. And she is screaming. And Samson turns to me and says, so how do you feel about this upcoming election? And he's asking about political views. And I said, wait, does this have to happen this way? Does this have to happen? Is this completely necessary? And he thanked me for my time and informed me that it was time that I be taken back to the lot, that I'll be driven back to my car. And he appreciated me showing up that night. And he walked away from me and he started to sing again. So I have, to my right, Addison going under the treatment of the helmet, and I have Samson walking away from me, and I don't know what to do. And I have the two guys from the van looking at me, waiting for me to join them, because they're the ones who are going to drive me back to my car. So I follow Samson, and Samson goes up. There's a little ramp right there, if you remember, and he turns to the left down that hallway, and he's singing. And I literally walk after him like, is this completely necessary? Does this have to be this way? And I turned the corner. I said, sir, I would like to say one thing to you. Like, if you've done anything tonight, you have certainly given me a demonstration on the power of data. And he stopped. He didn't face me. But there was a pause. And then he started to sing. So I turned around and I walked back to where Addison was at that point, because I didn't want to leave. And the van guys were a little closer. The area, the chain link area, fence area, where the gate was open now, and Addison was in the chair, and she was completely covered by that orange cloth and the helmet. So I walked by one of the handlers, and I say, the handlers were by her side when it was being administered, and I said, may I? And the handler looks at me and goes like, why are you asking my permission? So I don't know am I a member of the OOA, so I have certain freedoms there that I don't know about yet? I don't know. But I thought that was an odd response. So I go in and I kneel next to Addison's chair, and I start taking the cloth off and unwrapping her, and I pull the helmet off and I toss it behind the chair. And she looks at me, and she has a moment where she looks at me and she says, oh, hi, my name is Addison. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So she's reset, and she absolutely breaks. And she bursts into tears, and she falls into my arms, and she is sobbing and weeping and just heaving against me. And I pull her as close as I can to me, and she shakes, and she stops for a second. She pulls away, and she says, hello, my name is Addison. It's nice to meet you. And I look at her, and I said, I know, Addison, we've met before. I'm Russell. And she breaks down again, and she falls against me, and I wrap her in my arms, and I'm trying to comfort her, and I'm literally doing like the silly, weird, like I'm petting her hair, and I'm trying to pull her closer to me, and she breaks away from me again, and she says, hello, my name is Addison. Nice to meet you. And I say, Addison, I'm Russell. And she looks at me, and she has a moment of recognition, and she says, you're Russell. I say, yes, I am. We've met before. And she begins to cry, and I embrace her another time. And one of the van guys says, Russell, it's time for you to leave. And I said, you really expect me to leave right now? And he said, yes, it's time for you to leave. I said, you expect me to leave in the middle of this? And he goes, yeah. And so I turn back and I start whispering to Addison. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. If there's something you can tell me, if there's something that you can think of, please let me know. I don't know what to do. And by this time, the burliest guy of the two van guys has come up, and he literally grabs me by the arms and pulls me backwards away from Addison, and he pulls me out of the room, and he physically takes me and puts me in the van, and we drive away. So I witnessed that reset that some people have witnessed before, and I've only witnessed it really once before. My second time through, I never witnessed that. I never witnessed a break in her.
Okay.
You did.
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't see that. She was completely in control that second time, which I think is why she challenged me at the beginning and said, it's like, do you think I need to be saved? And I think is why she emphasized, I know what has happened. I know that they've messed with me. I know what they've done. I know how I got here. So I don't know where that leaves us, Mike.
I mean, can I break the tension? Pun intended.
Go ahead.
So on the last podcast, we joked about the Time Life CD series, Russell's Haunt Noises.
Yeah.
I think that there should be another version, Russell and Samson sing the hits.
Samson has a very nice singing voice.
So one thing I forgot to mention is I got this random room with 2 handlers when I was in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you saying that the 2 handlers had Addison reminded me of it. And this is funny because it comes into play. One of the questions I had, and I had rhetorically asked you before I went in, is like, how am I going back? Because I was sacrificed the first time.
Yeah.
Technically,
Good
So
question.
it's like, am I a ghost? Like, is it, like that kind of thing. And I was in one of these rooms, and the handler girl that put the tape on me and like got me in the chair was in that room. And
Wow.
so was another girl that I had met earlier in the night. So again, it was dead silence. They were just staring at me. So I nervously just started rattling off questions. And I was like, do you need help? Do you need to be saved? Do you want to get out of here? And then I looked at her and I was like, do you remember me? It's like, you brought me on stage to die. You made sure, like when I was chloroformed, and she looked at me deadpan with the biggest amount of attitude. Do you think I'm effing stupid? I was there when he told you it wasn't really chloroform. And it was just like, whoa, mind exploded. But that brings into something else. Do they know everything is just an act?
Good point.
Like, that was like the most perfect response like I could have ever asked.
Okay, so if Addison is a true believer, and those people know that it's a false act, like, are they playing Addison for her true belief?
Everyone's against Addison at this point, I think.
Not everyone.
Well, everyone in those walls. But I mean, with what I saw and with Tom, and seeing Addison say, "You're not my father," again.
Oh, dude, I am so envious that you saw that reunion. I am so envious because I have felt that I wanted to see that moment when Tom and Addison met again.
Right. But seeing that, hearing that, and putting those theories that the handler girl told me, like that, like she knows that I wasn't really sacrificed.
Right.
Like, like seeing and hearing that, and all of the time them saying, this isn't what you think. Like, we're not who you think we are. It's like it scrambled my mind, because now like there's like so many different theories.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, like everybody's against Addison. Addison's even in on it. Like, because if Tom can deal with this for the whole 8 months, Addison can do the same thing. So is it all of them against us? Is it all of them against Addison? Like, are they playing our emotions to see where we would go? Like, I feel like everybody's in on it except for like few people at this point.
Oh, it's interesting you say that, because I think that's part of the glitch in me from the second time through, is that question of, do you want to stand by me?
Right.
Is like, are you buying in? And my gut hasn't bought in. My brain is saying I have to buy in to either protect her or help her, because she has stated to me that there is an agenda, that there is a purpose, that there is a good that's going to come out of all this. But my gut is like, you killed somebody.
Right.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I think that's the glitch that's happening in me. And in that moment when I had to decide going head, going gut, I went head. I don't know where that leaves me.
Right.
And who knows what's going to happen on the final night at the culmination.
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
I'm ready, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different theories that could happen tomorrow. You know,
Yeah.
especially we saw the BOS Periscope. You know, what are they up to for tomorrow?
Yeah,
You know?
the BOS is doing something probably right now as we speak.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
I don't know. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for now.
Right.
Until tomorrow.
So,
And tomorrow is the meeting, and we're going to see something. Glory be.
glory be.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Was lost, but now I found. Was blind, but now I see.
It matters not who says the words, as long as the light is delivered by those whom the people can hear best. Some of you have been with us since the very beginning, long before I took power. And those few of you will continue the story long after I will be gone.
Well, Russell, it's Monday night. We had a crazy Sunday and an even crazier and even emotional Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a very odd 24 hours to say the least.
So when we recorded on Saturday, we said we were going to wait and then record the last half after we went through the end, which was last night. It's now Monday, and we're still trying to put it all together. My mind is still scrambled.
Yeah, I was very shocked today. Luckily there's documentation of this because the Periscope was up, and I actually went back and watched a little bit of it today because I was trying to remember what order certain things happened in. And even watching it again, I was like, wow, I don't remember that sequence. But
I did the same thing, and watching it was tough.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, when you torture yourself after a breakup and you listen to songs that remind you of the girl you just broke up with, and just to make yourself more and more sad. I did that today.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I felt.
Well, it's funny because all day long, and as we get into this will make more sense, I have been humming Amazing Grace all day today. And not because I want to hum it, it's just because it just keeps coming out of me. I just keep finding myself humming it to myself. So I guess we should begin with the email. Everyone who was invited on Sunday night received an email with very, very explicit instructions. As if you've heard us talk about the Tension Experience Ascension on this podcast, you know that it's an immersive theater piece where you interact. And they had very, very explicit instructions about not speaking to anyone, not engaging in anyone, not touching anyone. So I think beforehand the vibe was that we were going to be given a show of some kind that was going to be a wrap-up.
Yeah, I think all the theories were, well, Overseer is going to die. Like, we're going to see her get murdered.
I think everyone expected that.
Yep.
And so I was really emotional going into this. So I wanted to do something. So what I chose to do, and I don't know, did you respond to that email?
I did not.
Because that email came from the Overseer. So I wrote her back because my last contact with Addison in person, she had just gone through the helmet and they dragged me away from her.
Right.
And then she gave me a very sort of cold-ish, and I don't mean that in a bad way. She was just like a business-like phone call, just verifying that I was going to be there last night. So I didn't know how to react to the email, and so I emailed her back and just said, like, look, I appreciate being included in this, but and I want you to know that the last time I saw you, they dragged me away. I didn't want to leave because she wasn't present, emotionally when they dragged me away. She barely, like, she looked at me and sort of like, Russell, like she almost recognized me. But she wasn't present, so I let her know that, like, they dragged me away from you. I didn't want to leave. I'm sorry about that. And, I told her, I said, look, you once told me that, like, you were aware and that there was going to be good that came from all this. And I emailed her and I said, everything you've been through, you said that it could be used to do good, and that you were aware of everything, and that you are the one making choices and you are in control. And I said, you asked for my support. I gave it even though I didn't know what was going to be required of me. And I told her just one last time that I placed my faith in you. That's why I'm coming. And I wanted her to know that whatever she needed, and I'm not alone in this. Other people in the community felt this. Whether it's a confidant or whether it's a soldier, I am there. And I told her that I'm willing to fight and I'm willing to sacrifice, and I'm saying that knowing that others have died. And then I signed the email, either conquer or die, which is the title of the email that was sent out with the
Latin.
rules. But it was in Latin. So I sent that, and Mike, I went and I got a yellow rose, and I wore a yellow rose last night, as a symbol of my support of Addison. And the other thing is I had written, just in case anything did happen, even though I didn't think they were going to engage us in any way, really judging by the rules, I wrote out on my arm, conquer, either conquer or die. So I went in with this idea of, like, if I can be supportive, I'm going to be supportive.
You sound like you took a page out of the Mike Can book after we recorded on Saturday.
Maybe a little bit. So, but yeah, I was just, I think just somehow I was resisting this ending. I think that's what I was doing.
Right. Well, I mean, none of us want this to end.
No, not at all. And so Sunday night arrived, and a few of us met up in advance and talked and were nervous together. And then we went to the address that was given, the address of the compound.
And we all showed up, and BOS had a pre-meeting, so they were up to their silly tricks again. And when I got there, it was a lot of BOS, but people started filing in, so we were all hanging out, maybe like 100 feet or so away from the building. We didn't want to just crowd it. We know enough from haunts not to go to the door before the time is said, because bad things can happen. But finally, one of the guys with the flashlights, the security guy, like, waved us over and was like, "Here we go." We all got in line, and as we're in line, we can hear the music playing from inside. We can hear Addison singing Amazing Grace. It's echoing throughout that whole neighborhood. And this is not a neighborhood it's not
not residential.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very industrial feeling.
So there's not a lot of things to absorb sound. And you could hear this from a block away. And it was just chilling.
Yeah.
Like, hearing that and having your imagination run wild about what was happening inside and what was about to happen.
So there was this very long single file line of people, very quiet, speaking in hushed tones, if at all. It was dark, and the streets are only dimly lit in that area, and the door to the compound opened, and we've referred to the characters as called handlers, who are the young women who kind of guide you through the tension experience. Sometimes they engage with you, sometimes they're part of your processing. You encounter them throughout this experience. Two handlers I witnessed, put Addison in the helmet. They came out of the door, and these characters, these women are dressed all in white, and they are absolutely covered in blood.
Yeah.
A lot of blood. And it's all over their dresses, and on some of them you could see bloody handprints where they had been grabbed. And it was such a disturbing sight. And very slowly, a couple of them walked down the line, making eye contact. One of the handlers that I had encountered very briefly, actually, inside, stopped and stared at me for 15 or 20 seconds, just very quietly looked me directly in the eye and didn't say anything. But And then she moved on, and then 2 more came out, and then another 2.
And I was behind you in line. So when I saw that happening, because at that point we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how we were entering. We didn't know anything. So when you got stared at, I was like, they're going to take Russell. Like, they're going to make him do something. Like, that was my first thought.
The weird thing that I felt when that was happening, because as we've talked about, some of us were made, we both had a hand in making the decision of choosing someone for the potential of Ascension,
right?
Which basically could lead to their death. I just had this feeling watching them covered in blood that I'm partially responsible for this. That was just a really sickening feeling.
Right.
Because, we talked earlier in this podcast, we talked about that feeling I had of following your gut or rather than your head or whatever. And in my gut, I felt this is where my decision led, is to these poor women completely covered in blood. I don't know whose blood, but people have died.
Right. I didn't think that at all.
That's what was going through my head as she was staring at me.
They come by in groups of 2, and they walk the line a couple times. And finally, one of the security guys came out. I want to say it was the guy that would check us in in the parking lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely
with the van.
it was,
okay.
yeah.
And he gave us instructions. We're going to call your name, line up here. And he started calling people by their first name in alphabetical order. So it was like Addison, then Andrew, and, all the A's and B's and so on. And in groups of maybe 6 to 8, they were let in. And then the next group was called. And it's funny because Morgan and I were standing together because we're both M's, and many people before us were going in. And he joked to me, he's like, wouldn't it be funny if one of us, if they don't call our name and we're just stuck out here, and that's like how they're messing with us? And I was like, yeah, wouldn't that be funny? So they call Michael Gray, they call Michael Rizzo, they don't call me.
I noticed that.
And I started freaking out, and Morgan and I looked at each other like, oh my God. And then I was like, wait a minute, Michael Gray, my last name is before both of theirs. They didn't call it. But what happened is they used Mike. So M-I-C versus M-I-K.
Yes.
And so I was there. I was okay.
Yeah, and I am so happy that actually I wound up in your group.
Yeah. We had an all-star group.
Yeah, that was...
It was you, Morgan, Sean.
Yeah. It was, yeah. So they patted us down, checking for weapons, of course, as they always do. And then he knocked on the door, which seemed to be the symbol to let the people inside know that there was another group ready.
And while we're waiting in the front, the handlers are in front of us.
Yes.
The very, very bloody handlers. Now, I didn't mention this when we recorded earlier. One of the things I forgot to say was, as you know, I went in with this agenda.
Yeah.
To my second time in Ascension. And what I didn't mention is that my shirt was a message, and my shirt said "kill or be killed," and I went in there like ready to just like show it off to people, like inside, like that was kind of going to be like a last resort to Addison, like, look, do it or you're going to die, like do something, it kind of a message to everyone involved, like do it or you're next, like I know where this is going, kind of thing. And especially with the instructions that we received in the email, I did the same thing with my hoodie. I have a hoodie, and I left it unzipped all night until we got to the front, and I saw all the handlers dressed in blood. And I zipped it up, and it says "enemy" on my hoodie. And when I chose to wear that, I didn't know who I would be directing it to. Would I be directing it to the people as an "I'm your enemy," or would I be directing it at the people like "you're my enemy" or "you're the enemy"? So I had multiple reasons. So I had multiple outs.
That's interesting, because I did notice the shirt that you mentioned in the picture that I saw.
Yeah. And I want to make this clear. I did not go in to Sunday's event with an agenda. I just wanted that message. Like, if there was any way I could use that message, I wanted to represent it.
Right.
But when we got to the front and the handlers were there, covered in blood. I zipped up my hoodie and just stared them all in the eye, like one by one, just looking at them. And one of them that was there was just crying. And she was the one that put me in the bathtub. And so I just stared, like just not mad dogging her, at least in my mind, but I keep thinking I did, so I didn't mean to, but I was just staring, just because it's like, I know you, kind of, you know, like, you made me do this, and, you know, you were the one that set me up in my first ascension to get sacrificed. You were the one that told me, like, do you think I'm effing stupid? When I asked her, like, do you remember me? Her. So we have sort of, like, this weird
contentious
relationship, I guess you could say. And as soon as I realized it was her, I just stared at her, and like I looked down and then looked back at her, and I don't know if she realized what I was doing, but she just started sobbing. And it was just like, oh man. And she would sob into the girl next to her, and then she would make eye contact with me again, and I was just still staring at her. And at one point, I don't know if it was a tear, like a crying reaction, but it looked like her eye twitched, but the twitch looked like a wink. And it was just like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't know what to do, so I kind of gave this like half smile, and I just looked away, because it was just like, I don't know what just happened, and I don't know, like, I don't want to ruin this. Like, I can't ruin this for them. Like, I don't want to make her laugh. I don't want to do this. So I just looked away, and then like I got my bearings. I looked back at her, and she was just staring and crying, and it was like, then we like went right in.
Oh man. No, it was because I was near the end of the group. I was the second to the last person in that group. Everything came as a really slow reveal to me from the moment that door opened. And I want to know what your reaction was, but let me tell you what I saw from my perspective, because Sean was at the very end. Sean was behind me. You were, when you walk into the compound, there's 2 or 3 steps up into the first office that you go into. And so there were, I think 3 people between you and me, 4 people between you and me. And so, but you went to your left slightly, and you did this weird physical, I thought it was a convulsion of some kind.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know what had happened. And then I saw you lean down and look to your left. And I looked down at the floor, and what I realized is, from my perspective, I couldn't see what was going on, but I knew that there was stuff just strewn all over the floor. That obviously that something bad had happened. That was the point where I realized, like, this is going to get really dark really fast. Because if Mike had that shocked reaction physically that I saw, even though I couldn't see what you reacted to, like, and then, you know, Sean came up behind me, and, you know, he was instructed to close the door. So we closed the door, and then we were told to, you know, follow the handler that was leading us. Now, what did you register? Because you were up front.
A lot of it had to do with Michelle. She was first, I was second. And this is not tension Michelle. This is the real person Michelle. Because she started losing it. Like, and yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I could care less about my own emotions, but if I see my friends being upset, like, that kills me. And we walk in, and I don't know who she saw first, but I believe she was reacting to seeing Mary Lynn, who's the receptionist.
Right.
I saw Miles.
Yeah.
On the floor.
Miles is who I saw.
With a bullet hole in his head. Right.
So when we were led forward, I didn't get a good look at Mary Lynn, because at that point the the group had kind of dovetailed back on itself. So I didn't go into the office, actually, because they were pulling us forward. At that point we had been instructed to hold hands and follow the handler, and then Sean, being the last person in the line, was told that he had to close every door. So I walked up, and that's when I realized what you had seen, and that you had seen Miles, who had been shot to death. And I, at that point, I was looking at Miles and I kind of like was tugged forward. So I went into the other room. I did not get a good look at Mary Lynn.
It's probably for the best.
She was so sweet. A little crazy, but that woman had a big heart. It was very clear. And so we single file went through that sort of greeting room area, which I only spent a couple minutes in that room. And so many people have stories from that room, and I really don't have any.
Yeah, me either.
So, but the older couple was on the couch, and they had been killed. And the woman who is working on the jigsaw puzzle at the table was laying face down. And I thought the fact that she had a jigsaw
on her nose.
Yeah, a piece of the puzzle was stuck to her nose. I thought that was a very nice touch.
A jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, interesting.
See what I did there?
A little bit of an Easter egg, perhaps. We were led from there into a hallway. Now, one thing we should mention is there are several points, and we won't call them out, but there was a man who was not dead, standing in the middle of that room, and he had sort of a weird Mardi Gras mask on to hide his identity.
Yeah, and we're assuming that he's part of OSDM.
Yes. There are several of these people throughout as we were walking through the compound. So immediately at this point, I think everyone holding hands in this line walking through realized that we were about to walk through the compound. So leading out of that, the front room, we go into what is the changing area, which I spent a couple of times in my first time through Tension. And I've told you this, and we've covered it a little bit on the podcast, is that was where the character, or it's so weird. I keep going to the word character, but every time I say it, I hiccup, because they're to me, I reached that point that you kidded with me about several months ago about, like, these are real.
I wasn't kidding.
So I look across the room, and of course, like, there's blood. Everything is in disarray. Some of the suits are on the floor. This is where the white suits that we were told to change into during our processing. And Andrew is on the floor, and he's by the exit door, and he's had his throat slit. And Andrew, the first time that I came, it's weird. Andrew has become for me this weird sort of symbol of the Tension experience, or Ascension for me, and the reason is because when I was in the changing room the first time, he reached out to me, and he was nice, and he tried to comfort me in some weird way by telling me, like, oh wait, I know you, and things are going to be okay for you. It's like, this will be easy. Like, you're fine. And I was so freaked out. It was like, no, I'm not fine. Really, I'm not. But he was. There was something about comforting, like he was trying to comfort me. And then later that same night, one of the scares that I got was somebody told me that, like, I was interacting with someone in that same room, and he goes like, oh, and this one is ready to go. And I turn around, and it's Andrew again, but this time he's charging me with the hood and the mask, and it scared the crap out of me. And to me, that's this weird symbol of Ascension, is the person who's helping you can turn on you, and you don't know what their agenda is, and you don't know what their purpose is. So to see him laying there that way was so disturbing to me, because I didn't interact with him very much, but he became for me like the perfect symbol of all of the potential of help and betrayal in the same character. And also the fact that, he was portraying Ellis Gordon at one point where he helped, and then some people feel he betrayed the entire community. So, but anyway, that's kind of the feels that I had in that room. And then we went from there into the hallway, and once again, one of the characters with the mask, the suited guys, was present in that area, and we walked down to processing. And when we got there, when we turned that corner into processing, Mike, I heard sort of from the front of the line, sort of like, I guess I would call it a moan, and I don't know who made it, but I guessed, like, oh, I think I know what's coming.
Yeah, and it's true. We walk into the processing room, and right in front of us, dead center, was Simon, slumped in a chair. It looked like he was shot through the eye.
Yeah, it was, that is truly one of the most gruesome sights I think I saw the entire night.
But, I mean, I say this, but I don't mean it in the way it sounds, but the cool thing is that his face was bruised up. And I know how that sounds, but what I mean by that is Simon went down fighting.
Yeah.
Like, he said in my second Ascension that he was willing to die for the OOA, but the story that he told me laying there was he was not willing to die for OSDM.
Also around that same room, some of the processing ladies that we had encountered and talked to were dead on the floor, including Sophie, who actually, I think Sophie was right outside the hallway. I think that was Sophie. So when we turned and we left the processing room, she was the first dead body that we came across outside the processing room exit.
She processed me my first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was tough seeing that.
She was so sweet.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. And then we walked down the hallway, and there's blood on the walls as if people were stumbling and bleeding, and they were wiping the bloody hands on the wall. There were two bodies in that hallway that one of them looked as if they were running and had been shot in the back.
Yep.
Which that was a disturbing, really disturbing visual, because you know that whatever happened here was merciless. From there,
we walked by the Red Room, I believe, at that point, in the doctor's office.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we saw the girl from the Red Room, like, just...
Yeah, and the guy, too.
Oh, he was there.
Oh, yeah, he was...
Because it was dark in that area.
Yeah, the girl looked like she'd been brutalized. Oh, my God, that was so grotesque. And then he was off to the left, because I didn't realize that it was a body where she was at first.
I didn't either. I thought it was just a pile of limbs.
Yeah, I didn't understand what it was, and then when I saw him, and he was sort of like slumped against the wall, and he was completely drenched in blood, and then I looked over and went, "Oh my God, that must be her, that pulp on the floor." And then we sort of turned, and you looked over to the doctor's office, and
he's just sitting in his doctor's chair, being dead.
Yeah.
Like, he was too far away, so you really couldn't tell how he was murdered.
But there was something about that, because he was propped up. It looked like he'd been caught by surprise. Like, physically, it looked like he was either, like, reeling back or something into the chair. We sort of veered right at that point through the main hallway of the compound, it's not really a hallway. It's kind of a section where all the rooms join. And looking around, you could see that there was disarray, and there were other bodies, and this sort of weird guided tour of death and destruction led us to the area where the ceremony was performed for Ascension. And as each group was let in, the handlers had us file into the seats of this area. I know for the first groups that went in, they saw a chair dead center on stage, and at some point, and there was a sheet over it, and at some point that sheet was pulled away to reveal Addison, and she was strapped into the chair like the people who had been chosen for Ascension were strapped into the chair. She seemed very out of it, almost unconscious, but I know she was not. That was the scene as we slowly filed in and filled every seat in the place.
Yeah, I mean, and another person that was on stage was Samson, just there.
And around the theater, there were other guys in suits wearing those just disturbingly festive masks.
Yeah, at that point, we're all in there. We just walked through, like, the biggest death field that we have ever seen. So at that point, my head is racing and thinking, we're next. Like, we're not leaving here alive.
At that point, I was so upset. I actually just, I think, weirdly enough, when I saw Simon is when, like, I started to tear up a bit. And, you know, I know Michelle at the head of the line, you know, I could tell that she was physically shaken a couple of times when I caught a glimpse of her. And, I sat down, and by the time we sat down, they had already uncovered Addison, and I knew immediately that she was there. And I just looked around, and I knew that something bad, really bad, was about to happen. And yeah, I got really teared up, and it was really upsetting. And by the way, I just want to say Sean was sort of a rock for me during this whole procedure. Mike, he was the last in our group, and he sat next to me in the whole ceremony, and I can tell he was being affected by everything as we were walking through. And he leaned over a couple of times and just sort of put his hand on my shoulder, and Sean, I appreciate you being the rock that you are. And it was so great sitting next to you, and Morgan was right there, and Mike, you were there, and I'm very happy that I was near you guys. So everyone eventually makes it in, and Samson comes forward and takes the mic and welcomes us. And the one thing that I thought was really interesting, and probably very intelligent on Samson's part, because he has never seemed to get, I think, in my opinion, because he always talks about the power of data about the individual, because he always engages, he's engaged so many people about, we know so much about you. I always wondered if he realized that the power is in the community.
Right.
And he acknowledged the community, and he said he knew that it was a community, and she being Addison, had wanted to invite the community in for whatever the finale was.
Yeah, her most faithful followers.
Yes. So he said that made him nervous, but we were there. And I think he realized that it was in support of her or the OOA. I'm not sure what was going through the minds of the BOS people, but they were there. Some of them were. So he began to speak, and as he talked about community, he also acknowledged Addison's leadership, because without Addison's leadership, they wouldn't have built what they built. And he turns to Addison, and using, I assume, some sort of code phrase, because he walked up to the stage and he whispered in her ear, and she became more aware, and Addison began to speak to us. But what she spoke was, she was almost reciting what I would call the corporate line.
Right, what was programmed into her.
Exactly. Thank you. That's a really good way of putting it. She went back to the quote of, the words are important. It's not who says them. Except immediately, Mike, I just thought, she is not sincere.
Right.
Like, this is not the Addison who has called me. This is not the Addison who I fought for.
It's a broken Addison at this point.
Yeah, and which made me even more upset. The fact that she was starting the evening this way just was devastating.
It does not matter who speaks the words of Anna, for the words are all... You're here to witness the truth and the unity. Then we have to offer the words. It does not matter who speaks.
And she kept repeating it over and over again, and like it wasn't good enough for Samson.
Right,
So
and she kept glitching it a little bit, where she would get some of the words confused or wrong. She was looking at us like she wasn't familiar with us.
Yeah.
It was very disturbing to watch. And Samson, I think, really thought he could control her, because he kept trying to use the phrase, a code phrase, which I never quite caught what he was saying to her, but he was obviously trying to reset her, for lack of a better term.
Right, and that was the same thing that happened that I mentioned before in the my processing room my second time.
Yeah, you see, that's I never witnessed that. So this is the first time I've seen somebody try to do this with Addison. There's an interruption at this point. I had noticed, Mike, we were sitting near the rear of everyone, because because M and R are in the second half of the alphabet.
Right.
And behind me, the dark-haired woman with the bright red lipstick from the Periscope
Michelle.
Yes.
Our new friend, quote unquote.
The one that had gathered people's fingerprints. The one, like that, she was standing behind me, Mike. And I looked over my shoulder and I registered her being there. And I tried to make eye contact, and she was completely focused on the stage. And I think why is because of what happens next.
Right. She was making sure Samson was going to do his job.
Yeah, because and also in the leaked emails that we saw, she was the one who, like, screw it. Like, this isn't working. We're going to have to get so much more drastic than... and then Samson was the one that was like, no, we've got this under control. We can handle this. You'll be very satisfied with the results. She storms forward at this point. And Samson says, no, I got this. And she just basically shuts him down and says, no, you don't got this. She storms forward and she grabs a microphone and she takes control of the scene from there on.
So as she gains control, she basically goes back to Samson and in so many words says, you're done, and pulls out a knife and stabs him in the stomach a few times.
Multiple times. She had referenced the superiors, and she referenced the superiors a couple of times during this whole sequence, about how, they've put faith in the wrong methods. And she used Addison like a doll. I mean, she was like toying with Addison and saying phrases that would make her glitch and repeat phrases and words. And she turned to us and she stated that, look, we know how to brainwash people. Like, it's easy. You just learn their fears. You learn how they react to certain emotions. And she called out the name of the experience. She said, the most valuable one? Anxiety or tension.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think we're just going to leave you doing that one this time.
Yeah. And right before she talked about that, they showed a video of Addison being brainwashed.
Which was so disturbing.
Which was Tom and Addison. And first of all, they pulled a bag off of Addison's head, or a hood, I mean. Very familiar looking.
Yeah.
We've been there. And he tells her, your name is Addison Barrow. I'm your father and you love me. What's your name? Sabrina. And he slaps her. And finally he does it one last time. It goes through the questions and she says Addison, and the video ends.
And Mike, I feel a little doofusy saying this, but you want to know what I thought at that point?
What?
Why is her dad treating her so badly?
Oh, Russell.
I still couldn't give it up. I could not believe I had invested so much in the fact that this girl was lost and she needed to be helped, and that she did have a loving family who was trying to... I bought into that so much that even when that video played, my first thought was, why did her dad just slap her?
Right.
Yeah, it just... Ugh. There was a lot of feeling there.
It's all right. We'll get to the better feeling later.
And, but here's the other thing, Mike, is I want to know if you caught... Because earlier in this podcast, I talked about the Red Room. Very emotionally, I talked about the Red Room. I'm a little embarrassed about how emotional I was talking about the Red Room.
Don't be.
As Michelle is talking about Addison, she calls her bait. She calls her a trap. She says that she is the reason we're all there.
She was a perfect specimen.
Exactly. But did you also notice, as soon as she said the word, I flashed back to the Red Room experience that I had my second time through, because she said, you know what? You're a reflection. And that's the word I used in the Red Room, in a positive way.
Oh.
That the reflection that the Ascension was providing, the reason people were coming multiple times, is because we did recognize something that we needed to know about ourselves, whether we're too caught up in social media, whether we're too tied to our phones, whether our computers are ruling our lives or whatever. And I said that, to me, Ascension was pointing that out, that it's not the healthiest thing in our culture. And Michelle turned that word negative. And she said, that's why they're so manipulatable.
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that they do see themselves reflected in you. The struggling actress, the person who is forlorn and is left behind and lost and needs guidance, the abandoned daughter, like all of the things that I recognized in her at various times. Like Michelle spoke directly to that. And I know I'm not the only one who fell for that. And I don't mean fell for that as in I've been duped. I mean, fell for that as in I invested in that story that we were told about Addison, which came from Tom. For me, personally, he looked me in the eye and sold that to me. She just poisoned it.
That's what they do.
Just that when she said reflection, I flinched. Because I had used that word in support. In the end of that little ugly speech that Michelle made, another point that she made, because Addison stood up to her a little bit. Addison tried. I mean, she really did. Addison claimed that she still believed in Anak, and Addison claimed that she still believed in the word.
Yeah, and that's when Michelle did her thing, and she's like, see, even after all the fine-tuning, we couldn't reprogram actual faith.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the one thing they couldn't get out of her, actual faith. And I think the actual line was, the one thing we couldn't program out of you.
Right. And that real power lies in the faithful themselves.
This is really depressing, recounting all of this.
It really is, man.
So, it was a rough night. At this point, Michelle actually began talking about Anak, because Addison had brought it up. And Addison had challenged her and said, like, look, we couldn't get rid of your faith. You still held on to that. And she went over and she said, our superiors, and she kept referencing the superiors, had placed faith in Anak and placed faith in the words that were inside the book of Anak. And that Michelle believed that they were, she didn't use this word, but I kept thinking, like, she's challenging the old regime, and she feels that the new regime knows how to do everything better, but she's obviously not listening to the old regime. So she picks up the book of Anak, and she says, look, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if there is anything real in this book. I don't know if these words are true or not, but there's other techniques. And she basically throws the book of Anak down, saying, I don't care about this book.
Now, I honestly don't know if a goddamn word in this book is true or fantasy, and you know what? I don't care.
Yeah, that got to me.
It's such a symbol.
Yeah. I mean, we held it.
Yes.
You know, we were read to from it.
Yeah.
And, like, just seeing it just tossed like that, like, just like they're doing to lives, like, nothing matters to them.
And her point, I think at that point, was, because she had talked about it's easy to program the individual. She said something, and to be totally honest, I thought she said the word institute. I don't know if that's what she said, but suddenly all of the handlers come forward, and they line up in front of the stage. They're given pills, and, Michelle, she basically instructs them. She literally says out loud, she says, this is poison and this will kill you.
So swallow it.
And they all did.
And then I feel like they clicked out of it, whatever they were in, because she was like, what are you all doing here? You're free. Go. And as soon as they start leaving and running away, you start hearing the gags, the choking, the coughing, basically meaning the pills, the poison pills are starting to take their effect.
Yeah, one of the girls was actually like white foam was coming out of her mouth. And, they walked to the sides of everyone sitting there, and they began to collapse and convulse just feet from us on either side.
And dying in each other's arms. And
that was like there were three of them laying together right to, Mike and I were sort of off to the right side of the gathering, and there were three of them in each other's arms, just probably 6 feet away from us.
If it's a good thing they sent that email, because I think all of us at that point would have just been like,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
knock the tray out of his hand, knock the pills out. Like, no, you're coming with us.
You could start sensing the frustration, the sadness, the anger. There's such a mix of emotions going on in that room, and you could sense that the whole crowd was just devastated by this. Everyone wanted to take action.
Mm-hmm.
So as this is happening around us, Michelle once again starts mocking the superiors and their old world techniques. And then she finally starts making the point, the fine point of, look, you want to control the individual, brainwashing works. You want to control the masses, that's where you need the social media. That's where you need
The data.
the data.
See, individuals are relatively easy to condition and manipulate. You find out how they react to things like extreme emotions, trauma. And then you reinforce an agenda into their subconscious. But if you want to control the masses, you need all the median variables from a large data set. Controlled information on how people react to things like excitement, desire, joy, and most effective of all, anxiety, tension, if you will.
And she said information, said that's the key. She said at that point that she could show the superiors that the shadow governments is what she called them, the manipulations, she said, like they weren't working, that with information there was more to be done and more effective things to be done. And that is where literally she started giving the statistics of the tension experience, where she called us out, Mike. She literally said 31 of us, we gave our phones and we unlocked them for them.
Yep.
I was there. I did that.
Yeah, and that's referring to what we called the Hood event, which was the second event that we were invited to.
And if you remember, I had an issue with it, but my issue with it was the fact that they sort of mocked me afterwards for being that trustworthy.
Right.
And I trust people, and I believe that they're going to do good. And at that point, I really hadn't been shown anything that they wouldn't do good. So that really disturbed me. And so when she said that, I flashed back to that Hood event where I literally questioned them. I said, you've made me uncomfortable because I performed the act of faith that you asked me to perform. And now you're telling me that it wasn't a good idea. And now Michelle is proving that it wasn't a good idea. It was ripping me to pieces. And then she said, 42 of you filled out a 200-question survey. And why?
And not only that, I mean, she didn't mention this, but all of us that did it with such excitement. Like, we were lining up to fill out the survey.
Yes.
And then it gets thrown back at us.
But do you remember the phrase, Mike? She like threw that in our face and said, you all filled out this survey, and why?
Because we asked you to.
And it's that simple.
And while she's saying this, some of the people in the animal masks are coming up to the stage and dumping boxes of our profiles, our files, printouts of social media, printouts of our questionnaires, dumping it on stage.
Truly proving the point that they have so much data. And at that point, to be totally honest, I personally, sitting there with, drying tears on my face, I thought, oh my God, she's right. And I think that was one of the most just chilling moments of the entire tension experience for me. And it's stuff that we have talked about along the way of this. It's like we talked about it when 4 was going on her rants. We talked about it after the Red Hood event that we just mentioned. We did talk about these things, and we so naively bought into it. And it's really disturbing to have the point made of how vulnerable we make ourselves in this world with the freedom of information that we so willingly give amongst ourselves.
But here's the thing. We didn't learn a thing, because we will do this whenever the time comes again.
Yes, we will.
We're screwed.
At this I don't know, at this juncture during the evening, Michelle turned her attention back to Addison. And she made the point to Addison, because, you know, she'd called Addison out on faith earlier. She made the point. Like, you know what? The least we could do is at least let you have your faith. At one point, Addison had, I mentioned earlier, tried to stand up to Michelle a bit, and she stepped forward off the stage, and Michelle actually had pulled a handgun, which she really wasn't. She wasn't handling the handgun in a threatening manner once Addison kind of backed down. She just had the handgun with her. She wasn't threatening anyone. She certainly wasn't threatening us.
It was for show.
It was for show.
To keep us all in line.
Yeah, that was very clear. Except at this point, when she starts talking about Addison's faith, she walked over and she handed the gun to Addison. And once again, Addison rose to the occasion. It was the Addison that I put my faith in, Mike. I know that. For a brief moment, she was back. You know, and she said no, and she pointed the gun at Michelle, and Michelle walked to the back of the auditorium, I don't know, like the back of the room. Michelle spoke something to her, and, you know, Addison has said, no, I'm in control. She used that line one last time.
I am in effing control.
Yes. And then she turned the gun on herself and pulled the trigger.
And what you heard was click, 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 click. The gun was empty. And after Addison said that she was in control, Michelle, in that Michelle way that makes you just want to strangle her, says no.
And you never have been.
And yeah, that was gut-wrenching. And also, that was the moment when she called Addison by her real name, not the brainwashed Addison Barrow name. She called her Sabrina.
So while Addison is on stage with an empty gun and crying about everything that just happened and everything that she's realizing, someone brings a box up to the stage. Of course, all the horror nerds in the audience are like, what's in the box? What's in the box? There was no head in the box. Spoiler alert, if you've never seen Seven. It was her clothes. Her regular Sabrina clothes. There was no dress, no nothing. It looks like the clothes that she was in the video wearing. Because it was a white t-shirt and she put on a white t-shirt. So I get the feeling that it was sort of like one of those prison things, like that you see in movies, where it's like, oh, here you go, you're out, here's everything that you came in with. One of those types of situations.
But Mike, the other thing that dawned on me was you went through that moment, and I went through that moment. We all went through that moment where they turn to you and they give you your clothes back and tell you to leave.
Right.
So this was the end for Sabrina, Addison. They were telling her she was done, that she had been proven useful, absolutely, but from here on out, she's out. And it was such a symbol to me, the whole clothing thing, and she completely lost it, and just weeping uncontrollably, and slowly begins to change her clothes. And in the background,
another video comes on, and it's of Sabrina, who knows how long ago. It was definitely before our time here. But she was talking to someone that was holding a camera and saying, oh, so I have to sign this NDA. Oh, that's a lot. And it's basically an audition. It's basically like, you got hired, sign this paperwork.
It's her audition tape.
Right.
For the tension experience.
And there's a man talking. All of a sudden, he comes into frame, and you see his profile, and you realize that it's Tom. And I'm sorry, Russell. When that happened,
Oh, I was sitting behind you. I saw the reaction.
Like when that happened, like I lost my mind.
You came out of your seat, man. I
Yeah.
saw you physically lift up about 8 inches. You're just like, whoosh, you just rose.
It was like, oh my God. And I turned around to Russell and seriously, I'm sorry. It was probably not the best time to do that because you had just like this look of disgust on your face. And I looked at you with this like incredible, like, oh my God. And I pointed at you as in I told you all along.
Yes.
And it was just so exciting. And I seriously felt so bad right at that point.
Yeah, but what did I do right after that? You turned back and I gave you a slap on the back.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, like, okay, I have been so wrong for so long. And that was the moment where, like, yes, you were correct. I give you full credit. Like, you called that 1 month ago. And I absolutely refuse to believe you.
It's okay.
So, and the look on your face, oh my God, it was priceless. It was like, you actually made me smile in the middle of all of this death and destruction. You actually, yeah, that was a very humorous moment for me. But, yes. But, yeah, I literally did see you rise out of your chair at that moment. It was like, oh.
And at that point, Addison is fully dressed.
And at that point in the video, she is saying the words on the audition tape that are the words that were the beginning of the ceremony for Ascension, when you go through Ascension the first time. And those words are, did you find what you're looking for?
Right. And so she leaves the stage and walks down the aisle between everyone. We're still sitting down, and she motions for us to get up and to follow her. So we follow her through the warehouse, out through the garage door. And
all of the bodies are gone now.
Yeah. It was like a video game.
And the lights are on. The lights are bright.
There's people tearing the posters off the wall. Like, not us, people within the Institute just tearing it, basically.
They're striking the set.
Because, and here's something. A long time ago, I met with Bob Jones, who was a private detective. And he had mentioned that these things pop up and go from city to city. And one day he went in there and they were just gone. And when I saw people tearing, oh, the look on your face right now is incredible.
I was like, I just, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah. So when I saw them tearing the posters down, it hit me as like, holy crap. It brought me back to that conversation and those emails from Bob Jones.
Wow.
Like, they're moving to the next city.
This will never stop.
Nope. And so we walk through that and we get outside and we get to, there's a car parking there, and Addison motions for us to stop, and she's still crying and she's walking very slow. I mean, she's been like beaten, emotionally messed with. You can tell how she was walking. And she gets to the car and she stops us and turns around and just says, stop. Just stop.
This time, just let me go.
And she gets in her car and drives away. And then that leaves all of us looking at each other like, what the hell just happened? And one thing I noticed, there was a guy kind of guarding the car, like in front of us. When she was driving away, there was a guy in a mask.
Yes.
Did you notice he was holding a gun?
Yes, I did. Because I was on that side of him.
Right.
I was on the side of the gun.
So as Addison was driving away and I saw him turn to the car, I was expecting a shot to the back of the head.
Oh. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah. And so we're just standing there, and after she leaves, the gate closes. And then again, I thought, we're going to die. because we're trapped in here with these.
That was a very creepy moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an understatement. And then all of a sudden we see Darren and Clint, who knows what they are at this point. Like, are they part of it? Are they really the creators? Are they hired and brainwashed by OSDM? We don't know. They walk by and go out the gate and leave. And then the gate closes again. And then finally the gate opens one more time and we're told to leave. Now, all of this was on Periscope. Tension Periscope, this whole thing. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. Hopefully it'll still be there, but I don't think this one is going away. Because
I hope it doesn't.
This is important to the history of Tension. So after that, we all got together basically for a huge group hug and therapy session. And man, the feelings were coming out because, like, I think we realized this part of it was over at this point.
Yeah.
You know, and man, it's been a ride.
Yeah, it you know, there's been times during this when, you know, like, look, I get emotional and I've gotten very invested in some of this, some for the good, some for the bad. It's been a rocky road sometimes. This wrap up is so good at playing off of so many things that have come up over the past 7 to 8 months. I mean, they really hit a lot of the things that we've talked about on this podcast. A lot of the themes came up in this final event.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing that I said about reflection, the thing, you know, about information, the fact that we so willingly gave it, like the fact that they touched on all of that, it's so thought-provoking. You know, and look, you I think you said it best a few minutes ago when you said, we will not learn these lessons.
Right. And here's a perfect example of that. How many times throughout this experience, whether it be from hearing it from Four or hearing the interviews with Darren and Clint about technology and how this got created so we can get away from that and have actual human interactions, so we don't have to live life watching it through a phone screen.
And the phrase "be present" kept coming up.
How many people had their phones out while this amazing and incredible ending to something we're all a part of, we're just there doing exactly that? You know, we're never gonna learn.
Yeah, it's partially, I think, a generational thing. You know, I'm grateful for those people that took pictures because, you know, I'm going to, you know, cherish them for a very long time. But, you know, my phone was off. But you're right. It was like in the middle of all of this about data and technology, you know, there's a bunch of people with their phones out recording data.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did learn later that the BOS people had been instructed that they needed to document whatever happened on Sunday night. So it was part of the narrative, but also I think the point that we're trying to make is still valid. They wanted the record kept, but that in itself creates data. It is, like I said, thought-provoking. It's, you know, it is the entire point of the last year almost in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, this event was everything that I was promised and everything that I hoped it would be and more. You know, we've been told so many times that this is going to get darker. You have no idea what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Holy crap, you're right.
Certainly I never would have predicted anything like this as far as the ending at all. And I think I kept interpreting that as... they flat out challenged me a couple of times. I mean, they flat out publicly asked me and told me that they were going to test my pain threshold. They did that.
Right. And
they didn't.
And I had conversations saying, we know you've done Blackout. We know you've done Victim. That's nothing compared to what's coming. You know, so already they were in our heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they know I've done the same experiences, and you know, they hinted and alluded to that in some private emails early on. But, you know, the darkness and the pain was more emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're feeling it now.
And I will say this, you think of the ramifications of what this piece is, and look, I have gone on record numerous times that I feel this is an important piece, and I am so glad that they ended up extending the run the way they did. But I think the key thing here is it was such a conglomeration of different influences that it wasn't for everybody. But I think the history of this thing is going to fascinate a lot of people for a very long time. And I think the story of what this is going to resonate beyond just this community that participated so heavily. That's my personal belief.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, this is groundbreaking. Like, yeah, there's immersive stuff going on. Yes, there's Sleep No More and Then She Fell, which are groundbreaking in their own way. But this, as a whole, nothing can touch this.
Yeah, and this is more challenging. There's got to be a better way of putting this. All right, I'm going to just go with challenging. This is challenging in a different way. Like, your average theater goer is not going to go into this, I think, and it's too intense for the average, or I'm referring specifically to Ascension right now. It's too intense for the average theater goer, I think, in my opinion. But I feel it's really important that you have this doorway. And that's what this was. This was an opportunity for people to push boundaries in themselves. And you and I have talked about that. And the fact that I have never gotten, I have been devastated by theatrical pieces before, but I've never gotten this emotionally involved on a personal level, and the devastation has never come from such an intimate relationship. So that's where the challenge comes, I think, for the future people who look at this and go, okay, what's coming next?
Yeah, they're not going to realize the time that was invested in us and that we invested in them.
It was amazing.
Because that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely, it was astounding.
Like, if we didn't participate in any of the beginning stuff, we wouldn't be feeling the way we would. It was just like, oh, that's a cool piece. Yeah. But it's like, no, like, those were real people to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that goes back to something I said when I talked about going through Ascension the first time. Like, going through those walls, I was able to let go of reality, and I was there. Like, that was real. I was being inducted into a cult.
Yes.
Going last night, the same feeling happened.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I was walking through, and all I kept thinking about was Jonestown. Like, this, or like, in Heaven's Gate. It's like, this is what it's like. This is legit happening. Like, these people are dead. Like, I saw these people a week ago, man. Like...
Yeah.
Yep. That's me getting emotional. I hate you, Darren. With love. And Clint. You guys are bastards. Made me cry in a podcast. On my own podcast. You bastards. But that's the power, man. Please talk, Russell.
Oh, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Because I did it a little while ago. But on a very, very serious note, the messages, the thoughts, the comments, the social discourse, the community that was formed, the messages that were sent, the words that were spoken, whether they were screamed at us or whether they were written in an email or whether they were whispered in a phone connection that you could barely make out what was coming over the line, they had an effect. And that effect is resonating through a community that cares deeply about this experience and about the people who created it. And I'm not just talking about the writer or the director. I'm talking about the performers. I'm talking about the people who designed the set and the space. I'm talking about the people who painted the walls and hung the posters. I'm talking about the people who ran the freaking cable that made it all work. Everyone had a hand in something very, very special. And I believe, I'm not going to speak for Mike. I will only speak for myself. I believe that this is the beginning of something joyful. And I believe it is something transformative. And I truly, truly am grateful to have been able to participate. And whether we participate in the future of whatever this is, whether this community shifts and forms, loses members, gains members, whatever happens, the tension experience, Ascension, has had and will have a lasting impact.
Yes. I'm better now. I can talk, I think, for a minute. But I totally agree. And I want to go back to something that I didn't get to say because, man, it's dusty in here. All those bugs and mosquitoes get in my eyes. You have to rub them out. Like, ugh. But what I was saying, going through and I was there, each scene still had a story to tell. Like you could see, why Miles was shot in the head. He was probably the first person, probably caught the person by surprise. You could see Marilyn had her throat slit, because she's older, probably a little slower. You can save your ammunition because she's not a threat. So they went up to her and slit her throat.
Or came from behind was my thought.
Yeah. But, like slitting someone's throat is such a personal way to kill someone. Right, Addison? Sorry, I had to. And, just seeing I need a comedy thing right now.
Sorry. I couldn't hold it back anymore. That was actually, yeah.
But, like seeing each scene, seeing the story, like I mentioned Simon earlier with the bruises on his face, like he went out with a fight, like he went down swinging, seeing the guy you mentioned who was probably running, got shot in the back, each death had and created their own story.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a dead body for dead body's sake. Like you could see and visualize what happened. Like it was a crime scene and you could see it and feel it. And it was incredible to be taken out of reality and put into this reality. Because not a lot of things can do that. Even in haunted houses, it's like at the end of the day, you're going through, you still know, like, oh, that arm is made of foam latex. That blood is corn syrup. Last night, I wasn't sure. And that's such an incredible feeling to have.
Something that you mentioned a little while ago, you brought up Jonestown. And I remember, I was fairly young, but I remember when that particular story of a cult broke. And actually it was, it's an important story in terms of journalism, because it sort of altered certain things about journalism. We had, at that point, I don't think there'd ever been something quite as visceral as the videotape of someone recording their own death as they were being killed by gunfire. And that video, to this day, I remember every frame of that video. And I think what you touched on, Mike, and I think that what I was trying to stress a moment ago is, I'm going to use the word again, reflection of reality. There's so much going on in our country right now that is terrifying a lot of people. And I don't think we should panic. I think we should turn to each other and say, what can we do to make the future better? And I honestly believe that Ascension was poking that button, was encouraging that feeling that community is all we got, man. Because if you don't have the community, you're in it alone. And I don't want to be in it alone.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. Because, I mean, look at what happened afterwards. You know, there was what, 40 to 50 people hanging out, like people that have been doing this that I've never met and I got to talk to for a while, you know, people that have been there from the beginning, like talking to them, catching up, you know. And I mean, today, like I thought Facebook was going to blow up from all of the feels and all of the tagging and all of the friend requests and all of the thank yous. And and by the way, like, because I need to break the tension, seeing some of the things that people wrote.
Yeah.
We should not be scribes based on like things like that. Like seeing people pour their hearts out, thanking everybody, thanking the cast, and, you know, for this ride we've all been on, you know, like those words, they don't touch us. Like we can't touch those. Like we can't do anything about that.
And acknowledging the effect and the changes that it has brought in their lives, which is something that we have talked about on this podcast for you and I, Mike. But it's really wonderful to see other people going out and posting it on Facebook. And, you know, if there's a use for social media, connecting each other, you know, if we can use it more for that, rather than disconnecting from each other, that's a plus. How the hell do we get out of this conversation?
Easy. So, our friend Neil from We Are Indie Horror got something on his way out. He got a little postcard. And on that postcard was an image. And that image said, OSDM presents Lust, thelustexperience.com. The next chapter will be starting soon. We don't know when, but the website is up and they have plans for it. So, I mean, get ready.
I'm not ready at all in any way, shape, or form.
Well, not today.
But I'm curious.
I think we've said just about everything we've wanted to say.
Probably.
Except, thank you to the cast. And I want to write a 3-page novel on Facebook thanking each and every one of you. But I don't know a lot of you. And I know that's a weird cop-out. But you've touched my life. And, you know, without speaking for Russell, but I know he would agree with me. But, like,
yes,
you all have touched our lives so much. I mean, you you made me get emotional on my own podcast. I mean, that's saying something. You know, and it's like all of that stuff happened with like less than a half-hour time spent with you. You know, like I met Mary Lynn once. I met Miles once. I met Simon twice, you know, like there's not a lot of time I spent with you yet. You got to me. We always talk about community, you know, and that's not just for the people on the forums. That's not just for the people that go to the meetups and talk about it outside of the Institute walls. That's all of you guys too. Like you guys are all included. You know, you just didn't know it yet, but you're in on this. You know, thank you for putting so much into this. Like that schedule could not have been easy. This subject matter could not have been easy for most of you, you know, and you did it and you convinced me it was real and you convinced everyone it was real. And thank you. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, thank you just doesn't seem right to say. Like, there needs to be a better word or a better phrase than thank you to show you what I'm feeling. We should have some sort of contest. Like, think of a better phrase for thank you for the cast of Ascension. But all joking aside, like, this is seriously, like, I don't know what else to say, but thank you. And I hope I get to meet each and every one of you and give you a really long, creepy hug that's not meant to be creepy, but it's the only thing I would know how to do if I met you guys, and shake your hand and say thank you. And yeah. Okay, Russell, go.
usually I'm considered the emotional one on this podcast. So in conclusion for me, all I can say is I cannot say anything better than my friend Mike just said.
Stupid.
So yeah,
Fine.
What Mike said.
Fine, you want to go there? All right. Get the tissues, man. Because I want to thank Russell.
What?
Because I have probably been as crazy as anyone could have been with recording podcasts. And it's like, oh, dude, no, we have to get it out quick. Like, come on. And like the work you spent editing, getting this stuff out for not just me, but for the community, you know, like doing it so quick, you know, because like in the grand scheme of things, how important is tension in the world? You know what I mean? Like you have a life, you have bills to pay, you have crazy work hours. You put all that aside for the better of the community to get all this stuff out. So thank you for dealing with me over these past 9 months and my craziness and my ARG side where I'm like, your path is your own, Russell, you know, which is going to be a joke from here until eternity.
Yes.
You know, and like, so thank you for dealing with me and for editing the podcast and for doing this podcast. You know, like we've spent so many hours talking about tension. It never felt like a chore. It was just you and I nerding out about this, which is the whole reason we started a podcast. And, you know, like there are probably times when you're sick, when you didn't want to record, and we ended up recorded a tension podcast that lasted 3 hours, you know? So thank you for being a part of this. Ha, take that.
Wow. Well, okay. You're welcome, and I appreciate everything that this podcast is, and I know how much work you put behind the scenes, and I thank you, Mike. You have been sort of my coach through much of this, because I have never done anything like an ARG before, and I kept asking you questions about, like, what's the right way? What's the right way?
Your path is your own.
That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. That's very kind of you, sir. That's very kind of you, and I certainly appreciate it. And I appreciate, you know, all of the guidance and suggestions and, you know, encouragement you've given me along the way. You know, the podcast is about a year old now, a little over that, and it's been a year of adventure. Tension has been a major part of that for us, I think. It's been an educational experience working with you, Mike. And all I can say is I hope we continue working together in numerous ways.
Sure.
It would be an honor to work with you more.
And because I need to break this damn tension again, I just want to apologize in advance if during there was dust in here in my eyes, if my voice sounds further away, it's because I realized I was looking down, so I didn't have to make eye contact with Russell. So if that will explain any sort of weird sound issues or stuff like that, because I probably wasn't talking into the microphone because, yeah. Anyways, and Russell, you're always bringing up theater, and one thing that happened today is the cast of Ascension recorded a Hamilton parody song and made all the lyrics for Ascension and Darren and Clint and Gordon, and the whole cast is in it.
It's amazing.
And you haven't seen Hamilton, right?
No, I have not.
And the only exposure I've had to Hamilton is in Alien vs. Musical. But this song is fantastic.
Yes.
And we're going to put a link to it in the show notes. You need to hear it.
Trust us, anyone who's involved in the community, anyone who's been following Tension, you really need to hear this. And thank you to the cast for doing this.
This might be one of the last times we say this, but like, because who knows? Because the Lust Experience is happening. So there's the lustexperience.com. What I mean is it the last time we say, For more information on the Tension Experience, you can find them on the web at thetensionexperience.com or on Facebook, The Tension Experience. On Instagram, _tension_experience, or on Twitter, _tension_exp. And with that being said, I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell. Glory be. Okay, you know I trust you.
Sucker.
You bastard.
Who makes an immersive, gory, ARG story mixed with drama, come alive and make you scream out and submit for a bit to this messy situation, a tense indoctrination mixed with sensory deprivation. It's amazing, this creation in pre-gestation began with two best friends in Kansas where they were stationed. From Shawnee Mission North to way past graduation, they stayed making stories their main preoccupation. The director Darren, yeah, dedicated and daring, graduated full sail into the future was staring. Moved to Hollywood, kicked open the door to see what's in store. Saw 2, 3, and 4, but he still wanted more. To open a world of awe, a novel kind of drama, wicked, visceral, raw. And you won't be bored, no, you ain't gon' snore, cause it's sleep no more, but a little more. Darren Lynn Bousman.
Your name is Darren Lynn Bousman.
I wrote the Tension Experience Ascension to fuck with your fears with Clint Sears.
So Clint, you came, you wrote a script, all of it just working for beers. Darren left it all in tears, both working for years. This thing is so sick, authentic.
The tension got better, but your money went quick. Gordon gave them freedom, believing in all the meaning of preying on people's fears and the nightmares that they've been dreaming of. Voice saying, Darren, put Henry to bed soon. Put the hood on your head, head to the red room.
In LA, you can reach Ascension. In LA, you can reach Ascension. In LA, you can reach Ascension. In LA,
Ascension!
we are waiting to process you,
And we'll never back down until we get to screaming, coward!
oh, Darren Clinton Gordon.
Darren Clinton
We
Gordon.
are waiting to process you.
And we know you rewrote the game.
We killed for him. We died for him.
Me, I trusted him.
Me, I love him.
I'm the damn fool that got punched for him.
There's a million things you haven't done.